Chapter 885. Yin Yang's decisiveness stunned the two men in front of him. It was rare to see a fat sheep in the underworld being so decisive. Shouldn't he negotiate first before begging for mercy when faced with the two of them? Shouldn't he be forced to compromise after being toyed with like a cat toying with a mouse by the two of them? Why did it seem like he was doing it on purpose, like he could not wait for them to make things difficult for him? This did not seem right. Qian Duo, who was standing aside, reminded him, "Boss, be careful. These two are the infamous Bamboo Garden duo. They're both honor level 3 pinnacle characters." Not only did this sentence infuriate the so-called twin killers of Bamboo Garden, it also made Yin Yang's teeth ache with hatred. If it wasn't for you, would your father have to face the Bamboo Garden duo so soon? Their stance was clear with just a word of disagreement. Without further ado, the two men sprung up and attacked at the same time, a sword and an axe in a menacing manner. The other party had just sprung up, and had yet to actually attack. But Yin Yang could already feel an unprecedented pressure coming towards him. The sudden and massive aura made Yin Yang instantly understand the level of these two people's abilities. At this moment, Yin Yang, who was facing the immense murderous aura, was delighted instead of shocked. Instead, an odd thought rose in his mind. Based on the capabilities that these two men had displayed so far, at least, he felt that they were at Ling Xiaozui and Duga Chao's level. Perhaps they could not compare to the duo, but they were probably on the same level. According to Fatty Qian Duo, Ling Xiaozui, Duga Chao, and Gu Chaoyang, who had arrived earlier, could basically be safe and sound in the bound of universe, as long as they did not provoke any major trouble. Thinking of this, Yin Yang could not help but feel relieved. As for Jilingxi, Yin Yang was not worried at all. With the existence of the red light that could slay gods, not only could Jilingxi do as she pleased in the Tianxian continent, she could do the same in this realm as well. At the very least, before she met some pinnacle experts who could break through the red light, Jilingxi did not have to worry about anyone. Moreover, Jilingxi's cultivation base was not mediocre either. She had already surpassed Ling Xiaozui and Duga Chou, so she was definitely a minor expert. Good timing. Seeing the incoming attack, Yin Yang wielded the divine edge at once. His entire aura changed as well. From the gentle and elegant young master, he was a moment ago to a towering, unstoppable god of death. Seeing this, the two people on the other side couldn't help but be shocked. Although both parties had yet to officially meet, the unshakable aura that Yin Yang exuded was already overwhelming. It was a unique atmosphere where one's head was in the clear sky, and one's feet were on the ground like a towering mountain, majestic and solemn. The skinny man was already halfway through his attack, when he suddenly twisted his body, and a golden light flashed in his palm. A ray of light shot out from his hand, and hit Qian Duo's lower abdomen. His judgment just now was wrong. The fellow in front of him was actually a formidable opponent, and most likely difficult to deal with. In that case, the most important thing to do was not to end this battle as soon as possible, but to deal with the other combat power of the enemy, Qian Duo. As long as he lost his combat power, and could no longer support this fellow, the two of them could completely eliminate their worries, and go all out against Yin Yang. They could even make use of Qian Duo as a weakness of the expert in front of them, closing the encirclement, and attacking the enemy's reinforcements, creating a diversion. Qian Duo's cultivation base was not weak, at the level of a second-level honor, but he did not have much experience in fighting an enemy. When plotting against others, he would gain the upper hand by striking first, so he could be considered agile. Now that he was ambushed, he could not react in time and was struck. Qian Duo shrieked loudly. It was not a big deal for him to cry out, as the ambush he had suffered was within Yin Yang's expectations. However, Yin Yang was still rather disgusted by this child, so he did not lend a helping hand or warn him, intending to teach him a lesson. After all, the skinny man's attack was meant to paralyze Qian Duo's combat power, not to take his life. In spite of it, the protective blue light that glowed from Qian Duo's body the moment he was struck shocked Yin Yang. The moment the golden light touched Qian Duo's abdomen, a beam of blue light rose and knocked the golden light to the ground. This child's weapon is strange. Let's kill him together first, the fat man roared. The skinny man's delay was only the blink of an eye, but the fat man had already been engulfed by Yin Yang's overwhelming saber light in this short span of time. Clang, clang, clang. After a series of continuous sounds of weapons colliding, the fatty was shocked to find that the high-grade heaven-splitting axe that he relied on to run amok in Jianghu was already covered in wounds and riddled with holes in an instant. When the skinny man's sword came to his aid and allowed the fat man to catch his breath, the fat man lowered his head to take a closer look. The heaven-opener axe that he treasured like a treasure and refused to leave his side for even a moment had turned into a sawtooth blade. From the axe's head to its hilt, there were densely packed cracks, and they were all facing the same direction. Even if one really intended to use it as a saw blade, one could not wield it at all. The fat man wanted to cry, but had no tears to shed. It was also at this moment that the skinny man let out a deafening roar like the fat man earlier. Fat man, what are you doing? This child's weapon is too strange. Help him quickly. The fat man looked towards the direction of the voice and saw that the long sword in the skinny man's hand had turned into something similar to his axe. Just as he was about to step forward to help, there was a crisp clang as the skinny man's long sword broke into 2 pieces. Then it became 3 pieces. After all, Yin Yang would not stop just because his sword was broken. Of course, he wanted to take his life while he was down. The skinny man, who had managed to block another strike, retreated swiftly, intending to avoid the sharp edge. In spite of this, there was still no expression on the extraordinarily handsome face of his fluttering purple robe. He charged forward in a flash. His intention to kill was clear and vivid. With another clang, there was only the hilt left in the skinny man's sword. Both of them exclaimed at the same time, "Third-level honor?" Prior to this, both of them had tried their best to overestimate Yin Yang's cultivation base, but they still did not expect that this young man's cultivation base was actually on par with both of them, who had cultivated for more than 100 years. Otherwise, no matter how divine the weapon was, it would not be able to break a weapon that was protected by layers of powerful mystical qi so easily. The skinny man retreated, throwing the hilt of his sword like a hidden weapon, trying his best to fight for the slightest gap. With a flash of cold light, another sword appeared in his hand. The fat man had changed to another axe as well, charging forward with all his might to provide support. Both of them knew that the combined combat power of the youth before them was beyond their estimation. If either of them were to fall, the other would not be spared either. Only when both of them were together and resisted stubbornly could they have a chance of survival. Chapter 886. For a moment, the blade light rained down like rain, focusing on the skinny man. However, there was another blade that seemed to appear out of thin air. It flashed and went straight for the fatty's vital point between the brows with the speed of a white steed flashing past a crack. Saber Truth. Destiny Blade appeared for the first time in the Bound of Universe. The saber was merciless, and the Tao was merciless. One skill and 2 styles were executed at the same time. Blood splashed as the 2 men cried out in pain and retreated at the same time. The fatty cried out hurriedly, "Who are you? This is a misunderstanding, have mercy." Yin Yang's expression did not change, neither did his gaze. Only the saber light shone brightly as another world seemed to appear in front of the duo. Saber Lair. Their upper bodies, shoulders, chests, and other parts of their bodies were struck by the saber. They staggered back, blood gushing out of their wounds. Both men felt like their souls were being torn apart. They waved the weapons in their hands and defended themselves with all their might, but they could not defend themselves against the worldly disturbance. Fortunately, they relied on their profound cultivation base and mystical qi that protected them to reduce the saber's power, so they were not killed. However, what happened next made them feel even more hopeless. 2 rays of saber light, one black and one white, one yin and one yang, appeared in the sky. Saber Truth. Destiny Blade made its debut one after another, continuing the legend of the saber in the Bound of Universe. Yin Yang's voice was cold. Life and death in a thought. Stop. We are. Feeling the bone-chilling threat of death, the 2 of them shouted at the same time, intending to turn the tide and return to the sky. However, it was too late. The two of them hadn't even finished speaking when their heads had already flown up, while completely round pillars of blood sprayed out violently, showing the end of the battle. With a flash of his purple robe, Yun Yang stood 30 feet away, looking coldly at the two headless corpses that had yet to fall to the ground as blood gushed out from their necks. After a while, two dull thuds could be heard as the two corpses fell to the ground. Almost at the same time, two mysterious auras entered Yin Yang's deific consciousness space without a sound. Yin Yang raised his eyebrows abruptly. Amen. This was probably the karmic aura of this realm, and it was much stronger than the profound sky continents. Killing these two people was much denser than killing over 100 villains in the profound sky continent, so it could be considered as a decent harvest. The result was a pleasant surprise to Yun Yang, but what he felt was completely different. Little Fatty Chien Duo stared at Yun Yang with his mouth agape, and then at the two corpses. Suddenly, he screamed at the top of his lungs. Ah! Ah! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! Yun Yang frowned and asked, "Have you gone mad? I'm helping him kill his enemy, but he's actually shouting like a madman. He doesn't seem to be surprised at all. What kind of show is this? Is he addicted to acting?" Yun Yang was already annoyed by this child, and now he was even more annoyed. When he turned to look, he could not help but widen his eyes. Above the two corpses on the ground, the shadows of two flags suddenly emerged, swaying in the wind and stopping in the air. It was a spectacular sight. Although the two flags were only illusions, one could clearly see that they were glowing with a green light. They were like reflections of the void, as if they were real. It was a strange sight indeed. When a profound cultivator died, his soul would appear due to his profound cultivation base, and he could even enter the cycle of reincarnation. It was not rare, however, for two flags to emerge from his body. What was going on? This was completely beyond Yin Yang's understanding. Even with his wisdom and composure, he could not help but be stunned as he asked with a frown, "What is this?" The question was naturally directed at little Fatty Chien Duo, a native of the bound of universe. Before Yin Yang's words echoed in the air, the two flags had already fluttered and soared into the air. Then, the illusions disappeared without a trace. Little Fatty screamed at the top of his lungs, "The Celestial Luck Banner! It's the green Celestial Luck Banner! The Celestial Luck Banner! It's over, it's over!" Yin Yang gave him a slap and said angrily, "What do you mean by over? What are you screaming for? Are you screaming for your soul?" Little Fatty's face was filled with despair. "Boss, we're in big trouble." "Big trouble?" Yin Yang frowned. "What kind of trouble?" At this moment, little Fatty's face was filled with grief. "That's the Celestial Luck Banner. Oh my God. This isn't the place to talk. Let's go." Yin Yang disposed of the two corpses with a wave of his hand and grabbed little Fatty, the two of them leaving swiftly. Just by looking at little Fatty's reaction, he knew that this was no trivial matter. However, the person had already been killed. Even if he regretted it, it was useless. Since it was useless, it was more important to sort out the cause and effect as soon as possible. Little Fatty might not be able to explain the matter to him in a short amount of time, but it was something that Yin Yang needed to understand urgently. It was more important to find a place to sort out the cause and effect. Half a day later, in a secluded cave, the paleness on little Fatty's face had yet to fade, and his gaze was still blank. "The Celestial Luck Banner. Sigh, you've just ascended, so of course you don't know about it. Let me tell you. The Celestial Luck Banner is a top-notch item in this world. Only when a school or family is established and has reached a certain level, and is recognized by God, will the Celestial Luck Banner appear. In other words, the Celestial Luck Banner is almost equivalent to the school's treasure. The Celestial Luck Banner gathers the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, and stabilizes the school's fortune. It's the treasure of destiny. The treasure of destiny. The Celestial Luck Banner is divided into 6 grades. The lower-class Celestial Luck Banner is black. As long as a school of a certain scale has reached a certain level of ability and qualification, it can possess it. As long as a school has the Celestial Luck Banner, its power will definitely soar because everyone in the school will receive the benefit of accelerated cultivation. The black low-grade Celestial Luck Banner can double the density of spiritual energy at the sect's location. Moreover, because of the sect's providence, when its disciples cultivate and absorb spiritual energy, their absorption speed is several times faster than ordinary itinerant cultivators. Do you understand now? When the concentration of spiritual chi is doubled, the providence will double the cultivation speed. In this case, the cultivation speed of a disciple of a lower-class school will be 4 times faster than that of an itinerant cultivator without a school. Little Fatty looked at Yun Yang and said with some resentment, "Do you understand now?" Yun Yang took a deep breath and said, "I understand a little." Then, do higher grades of celestial luck banners have stronger effects? He thought to himself, if that's the case, doesn't it mean that the itinerant cultivators in this world have no way out? No matter how talented and gifted one was, how could it be compared to someone else's cultivation being enhanced by a school? Not to mention, any disciple that could be accepted by a large sect would have a weak aptitude. Above the lower-class black celestial luck banner is the middle-class green celestial luck banner. Little Fatty said, "The green celestial luck banner can increase the concentration of spiritual chi at the school's location by 4 times. The providence of the school is still twice, but when combined it's 6 times. Little Fatty blinked and said with a chuckle, "Although the providence is mysterious, it's a fixed number. No matter what grade of the celestial luck banner, the augmentation of providence is limited to 2 times. Take all the sects with the black celestial luck banner as an example. If the spiritual chi absorbed by an itinerant cultivator is 1, then the spiritual chi of a lower-class sect is 4. Together with the double providence, it's actually 6 times that of an itinerant cultivator. In this case, 1 year of cultivation is equivalent to 6 years of cultivation for an itinerant cultivator. After that, the middle-class sects have 4 times the spiritual chi, which is 16 times that of an itinerant cultivator. Together with the double providence, it's 18 times. In other words, a middle-class sect's cultivation speed is 3 times that of a lower-class sect. It's 18 times that of an itinerant cultivator. Once Little Fatty said this, Yun Yang understood everything at once and could not help but be shocked. Don't be in a hurry to be shocked. The upper-class sects of a higher class have the silver celestial luck banner, which is 10 times the spiritual chi atmosphere, and 2 times the providence. 10 times the spiritual chi is 1,024 times. Together with the double providence, it's 1,026 times. In other words, 1 day of cultivation in an upper-class sect is equivalent to more than 3 years of cultivation for an itinerant cultivator. It's 7 times that of a middle-class sect, and more than 200 times that of a lower-class sect. Yin Yang's eyes widened as he listened to this. Was there such a thing in this world? Did this not mean that cultivating in an upper-class sect was equivalent to ascending to heaven in a single bound? Was there still a way for itinerant cultivators to survive in this bound of universe? Little Fatty said, "This is only the upper-class, middle-class, and lower-class sects. Only 3 of the celestial luck banners. Above them are the gold celestial luck banners and the amethyst celestial luck banners. The gold celestial luck banners have 16 times the spiritual chi, while the amethyst celestial luck banners have 60 times. As for the specific amount of spiritual chi, you'll have to calculate it yourself." It's said that the cultivation base of a disciple who possesses the amethyst celestial luck banner in a day of cultivation is no different from a disciple of a lower-class sect cultivating for 100 years, if calculated in multiples. Although it varies from person to person and depending on their aptitude, and the number of talented disciples in any sect is very small, but, with this kind of support, even the most useless disciple in a high-grade sect is more outstanding and powerful than the most talented disciple in a low-grade sect. Compared to the sects and schools, the aristocratic families who can possess the celestial luck banner are relatively limited. Of course, there are also some super-aristocratic families that have stood strong for a long time, who possess the celestial luck banner, and their grade is not low either. However, most of these so-called aristocratic families only attach themselves to a certain sect and become its vassal, cultivating with the power of the celestial luck banner. Little fatty Qian Duoduo sighed and said, "This is also the fundamental reason why it's hard for a poor family to produce a noble son in the bound of universe now. This is also the fundamental reason why the martial world is filled with sects and schools, aristocratic families, the so-called one-leg bandits, and the so-called martial world itinerant cultivators are becoming rarer and rarer." The general trend had basically been drawn. The setting of the celestial luck banner had been considered for a long time. Finally, it was decided to use it. Perhaps it was a little exaggerated, but his personal opinion was actually the same as in modern society. Some people were born to a height that ordinary people could not achieve, even if they worked hard for 3 lifetimes. In this aspect, it was very similar to the celestial luck banner. The celestial luck banner could still be fought for, but... Chapter 887. Yin Yang sighed. "That's right. If this goes on, it'll be hard for the poor to have a son. At the end of the day, it's just because of the huge disparity in the distribution of spiritual qi in this world." The little fatty chuckled. "Think about it. Even if you're a peerless genius and have a suitable and profound cultivation method, you'll have to cultivate for 100 years. And you won't even be able to cultivate as fast as those top sects in a day. How are you going to compete with them? You can only join a sect because of the situation. Only then can you improve further. However, it's not easy to join a sect, especially those big ones. The path of cultivation is difficult. It's not just a saying." Yin Yang's expression was unprecedentedly solemn. An ordinary cultivator's entire life could only be equal to a day of a super sect's disciple. How could they compare? According to Little Fatty, it wasn't nearly impossible to conquer the bound of universe single-handedly. In fact, it was absolutely impossible. Just as Yin Yang's heart was haunted by negative emotions, Fatty continued, "Those who possess the amethyst celestial luck banner and the golden celestial luck banner basically don't roam the martial world. Even if they do, 99% of them won't reveal their identity. After all, it's too much of a bully to compete or fight with others with their background and ability. However, those who possess the black, green, and silver colors are enough to look down on their peers and look askance at rogue cultivators in the martial world." Qian Duoduo's chubby face was radiant as he talked about these things. Speaking of which, Yin Yang was lucky. If it had been someone else who knew about these things, they might not have been as knowledgeable as Little Fatty, who was able to understand the crux of the matter in such an orderly manner, even if it had been someone else. Although Qian Duoduo's cultivation base was nothing in Yin Yang's eyes, he was very familiar with the things that Yin Yang desperately wanted to know. He was so knowledgeable that even Yin Yang was impressed by him. Perhaps this was the root cause of his low cultivation base and limited combat power. Yin Yang came to this conclusion. The martial world of the bound of universe is ruled by 4 forces on the surface. The 9 states and 4 seas are divided into 4 regions. The place we are in now is under the jurisdiction of one of the 4 palaces of the Eastern Celestial Palace, the Sacred Heart Palace. The other 3 palaces of the Eastern Celestial Palace are Saint Origin Palace, Saint Soul Palace, and Saint God Palace. The 4 great powers are the Xiaoyao Palace, the Eastern Heavenly Palace, the Western Holy Palace, and the Northern Devil Palace. Among them, the Eastern Heavenly Palace is ranked second. It was only inferior to the Xiaoyao Palace of the monster race. The reason why Xiaoyao Palace is the leader of the Elemental Gathering Palace is partly because the Demon King is the ruler of the world, and his power is unparalleled. Secondly, the 12 Demon Kings and 36 Demon Generals under him are all tyrannical beings that can move unhindered in the world. Few can match them. After that, Qian Duoduo began to introduce the territories of the 4 major forces one by one, as well as the unique characteristics of their individual strengths. He went on one after another. Just the introduction of the Eastern Celestial Palace alone took him a good 4 hours. It seemed like he was far from done, and this was just the tip of the iceberg. Yin Yang, on the other hand, was not the least bit anxious. He listened attentively throughout the entire process and memorized them carefully, committing them to memory. Everything that he had obtained today would be things that he could use to roam the Xianhuang world in the future. The more detailed he knew, the better. He did not mind little Fatty's nagging at all. To Yin Yang, the more nagging and detailed the better. Actually, as the top forces in the Xianhuang world, other than the lower and middle level sects who are still active, the higher level cultivators have long been disdainful of roaming the martial world. It's too shameful. After a long while, little Fatty finally finished talking about the four forces. It was as if little Fatty had ended the conversation. Yin Yang could not help choking. F***ck, they don't even roam the martial world anymore. But King talked excitedly from night to day. At the same time, there was a lingering shock in Yin Yang's heart. Little Fatty's words seemed to have another layer of meaning. Those high-level cultivators who did not roam the martial world. Even if they were disdainful, even if they were shameful, this was not the main point. Instead, where did they roam? Such cultivators, such high-level existences, would never hide. And it was impossible for their cultivation journey to stop. The true meaning of not roaming the martial world had another meaning instead. It should be that they had other experiences to train in. Such a place could not be compared to the ordinary martial world. Under the four forces, the cultivators of the same level from the four temples of the Eastern Celestial Palace basically don't roam the martial world anymore. Everyone knows that they won't really disappear from the world. Even if they still roam the martial world, as long as they don't reveal their identity, who can recognize them? So on the surface, it's the martial world sects fighting for supremacy. Under each temple, there are 3 upper-class sects, 6 middle-class sects, and 9 lower-class sections. These sects are all qualified to possess the Celestial Luck Banner. Below them are the lower-class sects, rogue cultivators, and various noble families. They're competing against each other, fighting for the chance to rise. At this moment, there was a hint of sadness in little Fatty's voice. The sudden sigh made Yin Yang take a second look at him. What are you sighing about? What exactly does the chance to rise refer to? Asked Yin Yang. The ownership of the Celestial Luck Banner. Little Fatty Qian Duoduo said. The location of the Celestial Luck Banner isn't fixed. It can be snatched. When a sect reaches a certain level, it can issue a challenge to a sect with the Celestial Luck Banner. As long as it wins the challenge, it can replace the original sect and obtain the Celestial Luck Banner. As for the defeated sect, it will naturally fall due to the loss and won't be able to recover. This is also the last path to heaven that the person who created the Celestial Luck Banner left for the bottommost cultivators, the path of advancement. Yin Yang's eyes lit up when he heard this. Stroking his chin, he murmured, "There's actually such a thing? Interesting." Looking at Yin Yang's expression, Qian Duoduo scoffed and said, "Interesting? Do you think this path is easy to walk? It's a one-log bridge, a path of no return. There are 4 temples under the East Celestial Palace. Under each temple, there are only 3 upper-class sects, 6 middle-class sects, and 9 lower-class sects. But do you know how many other sects without Celestial Luck Banners there are? How many forces, and how many people want to cross this one-log bridge?" Yin Yang asked, "How many? Could it be that there are hundreds of sects, 1 in 100? 1 in 100? Under each temple, the most conservative estimate, there must be 30 to 20,000 sects." Fatty said lightly, "Well, that's about it. Plus its gangs, sects, and aristocratic families. There's a total of this number. But it's still not enough to pick 1 out of 100. Do you think it's more interesting now?" Yin Yang shuddered, not having the time to respond to little Fatty's mocking tone. 30 to 20,000 forces, to fight for 9 lower-class Celestial Luck Banners. What kind of ratio was this? Chapter 888. What's more, up until now, since the rule of seizing the Celestial Luck Banner was established, the number of sects that managed to capture the flag is less than 100. Fatty paused and continued. Up until now, it refers to hundreds of thousands of years. Less than 100 sects have succeeded. Don't you find it interesting? Cough, cough, cough. Yin Yang coughed again, unable to retort. You're surprised? Do you know how many lower-class sects have risen from the middle class to the middle class and successfully fought against them? Fatty spoke with an unusually indifferent expression, as he looked at Yun Yang from the corner of his eyes. Yun Yang was discouraged, but he refused to show weakness. How many? I've forgotten whether it's 8 or 9, but it's definitely less than 10. Fatty licked his lips and continued. Also, how many middle-class sects have risen to the upper class? I remember this very clearly. For so many years there have only been 2, only 2. Yun Yang rolled his eyes and said, then how many upper-class sects have risen to palace level? Fatty bared his teeth. Ha, you're really bold. Upper-class sects have risen to palace level? You're indeed an ascended expert. You're far-sighted to think so far ahead. I'm sorry, this young brother's knowledge is really limited. Anyway, from what I know, there's only one. He smiled and continued. There's not one either. When he mentioned the words ascended expert, there was a hint of sarcasm. Yun Yang was completely silent. Even his gaze left little Fatty. Fatty was still looking at Yun Yang from the corner of his eyes. Then, he stretched his legs and lay down comfortably on the ground. Resting his head on his hands, he said as if he was sleep-talking. Brother, it's really not that I want to discourage you. You've just ascended, and your cultivation base is already at honor level 3. Not to mention that you're already invincible in your original realm. An unprecedented honor expert. You're also a rare genius in the bound of universe. However, in this bound of universe, it's never just because you're a genius that you can go far, and your cultivation base will always be high. If your luck isn't good, you'll probably end up like this for the rest of your life. Who knows when you'll meet a tough opponent who'll kill you. If your luck is slightly better, you can join an aristocratic family attached to a lower-class sect, and enjoy half of the celestial luck banner. Don't look down on it, that's really good luck. If you're especially lucky, you can win the favor of someone in a lower-class sect, or make friends with them, and become a disciple of a lower-class sect. Of course, if you're really lucky, there's also a slight chance that you can directly become a disciple of a middle-class sect. However, this chance is really similar to a meteor falling from the sky hitting your buttocks, and blocking your buttocks without hurting you. As for the upper-class sects and above, those are things that you can't even dream of. You'd better not be delusional, lest you shed tears in vain after a beautiful dream. Right, with your talent and your current cultivation base and ability, you can try to make a move on the super aristocratic families. Not only are there very few super aristocratic families in this world, they rarely show themselves and aren't something that ordinary martial artists can come into contact with. Let this young brother say something even better. There are thousands and thousands of cultivation methods in this world. There's nothing you can't think of, and nothing you can't get your hands on. It's a pity that most of them are in the hands of sects and aristocratic families. There are almost no resources in the martial world. Do you understand now? The real situation in the bound of universe is actually just a few numbers. Rogue cultivators have no resources. Do you feel that your future is bleak after understanding all this? That there's no hope at all? Little Fatty Chien Duo attacked Yin Yang relentlessly, his eyes gleaming with schadenfreude. Is there only despair and helplessness left? Yin Yang narrowed his eyes and nodded slowly. You're right. I really only have one feeling now. What feeling? Can you share it? I feel that I should thank you properly now and help you loosen your bones. Huh. With a pained cry, Yin Yang pounced on him, punching and kicking him. Little Fatty's joy turned to sorrow as he was taught a harsh lesson by an unscrupulous person. Even when he begged for mercy, it was to no avail. In just a moment his face was swollen like a pig's. After a while, Yin Yang looked over refreshed. Go on. My cheeks hurt, I can't speak. Is it that serious? Shall I rub it for you? No need, no need. I'm just saying. I'll talk now. Little Fatty talked about everything in detail for 2 days and 2 nights, spitting saliva everywhere. He talked about the rules of every industry in the bound of universe, the division of forces, sects, cultivation bases, and the beginning and end of the celestial luck banner, especially the methods of obtaining the celestial luck banner, as well as the successful examples. The more Yin Yang listened, the more he felt that Little Fatty was a talent. A real talent. There was so much information. It wouldn't be surprising if a cultivator with a certain level of achievement knew about it. However, There weren't many who were as familiar with it as little Fatty did. Furthermore, he knew everything clearly and was extremely familiar with it. Not everyone had such eloquence and organizing skills. By the time Yun Yang finished listening, it was already the wee hours of the third day. Yun Yang did not feel the slightest bit sleepy. Sitting at the entrance of the cave, he looked at the sky that was starting to brighten as he pondered quietly. Little Fatty, who had also stayed up for a few days, peeked at Yun Yang's expression with reddened eyes. Other than the redness in his eyes, there was also a strong sense of interest and hope. He guessed that Yun Yang was thinking about how he would go on in the bound of universe in the future. Qian Duo was filled with curiosity. How did this pretty boy in front of him plan to go on? The only thing he could be sure of was that no matter which path Yun Yang chose, it would not be an easy one. The sky gradually brightened. The dew on the leaves of the few stalks of grass at the entrance of the cave glimmered. Yun Yang pondered in silence, like an old monk in meditation. Little Fatty finally could not hold it in anymore. He got up carefully and said, Boss, what do you plan to do? This young brother is untalented, but I'm willing to serve you. Yun Yang was not at all surprised by little Fatty's reaction. He had long seen that this child had nowhere to go and his future was bleak. Following him was in fact the best way out now. Otherwise he would not have introduced him so diligently. It was as if he was afraid that he would be rash and inadvertently violate some law of heaven. You mentioned the black celestial luck banner, green, silver, gold, purple. But these are only the 5th class. Didn't you say there's a total of 6? Cough, there's the supreme banner at the end. But that's not something ordinary people know. Everyone knows that there is one, but no one knows what it is exactly. I see. Yun Yang pondered and returned to the topic at hand. What do you want me to do? When he asked this, Yun Yang's heart was as calm as ice. He had made up his mind. What does everyone want Yun Yang to do? Chapter 889. Fatty rolled his eyes and said, How would I know what you should do? I only want to ask you now, boss. For this period of time, let's team up. Ever since I saw you, I felt a sense of familiarity and affinity. What? Team up? You feel a sense of familiarity, affinity and affinity? Yun Yang turned to look at him, his eyes unusually wide. Although he had already expected this person to submit to him, what kind of words did he utter? Could he be any more shameless? Are you addicted to me hitting you? Fatty looked a little bashful. I cough actually. I'm just a little lonely. I want to find a companion. Yun Yang almost laughed out loud. Lonely? Why don't you say you're empty, lonely and cold? Your father has a strong arm, but I can't give it to you. You're afraid, aren't you? Afraid that you'll be killed at any time if you're alone? Yun Yang looked at Fatty teasingly. Following me is actually finding a bodyguard by your side. Not only can you talk to relieve your loneliness and emptiness, you can also be protected and supported during critical moments. Fatty blushed. This isn't embarrassing, is it? Yun Yang smiled and said in a low voice, Of course not. Fatty cheered and said, Boss, you've just come up anyway. Even with my explanation, you've never put it into practice. You know how it is, but you don't know why. Why don't you team up with me? At least, you'll have a guide who knows everything, won't you? Yun Yang nodded. What you said makes a lot of sense. I agree wholeheartedly. Very well. All right, I'll team up with you. When little Fatty heard that, his brows immediately danced and his face beamed with joy. Fatty, your family background isn't simple either, is it? Yun Yang asked. His words seemed to touch upon the little Fatty's sore spot. His expression, which had just brightened up, immediately darkened again. He sighed silently and said, You're right, but it's a pity that my family is no longer my family. My father was the patriarch, but he passed away last year, and passed on to second uncle. Just 3 months ago, second uncle expelled me from the family, and forcibly deprived me of the celestial luck banner and spirit vein. Now I'm just a rogue cultivator in the pugilistic world. At this point, little Fatty's face was filled with malevolence as his muscles spasmed. She took a few deep breaths and held back her tears as she said slowly, Not only am I homeless now, but I also have nowhere to stay. The reason I'm trying so hard to get the rhymed orchid is because I want to repair my spirit meridians. But, even if it's repaired, I won't be able to enjoy the benefits of the clan's celestial luck banner. He laughed bitterly and said, to be honest, after buying the myriad rhymed orchid, I'm only left with less than 100 spirit jades. Apart from that, I also have a small amount of gold medicinal pills. Everything else is gone. When he chased me out of the house that day, he didn't even let me return to my own courtyard to tidy up. Yun Yang was silent for a moment before he said, I see. He had always felt that this little fatty's actions were too extreme. He was like a bird that was frightened by the mere twang of a bowstring, rootless duckweed, and had no sense of security at all. So this was the reason why he was so passionate towards a complete stranger like him. It seemed that little fatty was not lying when he said that he was lonely. However, there were other factors: loneliness, hatred, helplessness, and despair without anyone to rely on. That was barely enough. It was also because of this reason that he had stuck himself to Yin Yang like a plaster after confirming that Yin Yang was not a bad person. At least not someone with ulterior motives towards him. He did not even care that he had just ascended and did not know anything. Nor did he have any foundation. It was all because he was like a traveler in an icy world, desperate to find another person to warm himself up with. It had nothing to do with any other utilitarian thoughts. All right. Now is not the time to be melancholic. Tell me quickly, where is the place to register a sect? Yin Yang stood up and asked faintly. Little Fatty's eyes glowed brilliantly as his voice trembled slightly. Boss, are you sure you want to choose this path? The path forward that Yin Yang had revealed could be said to be the most difficult path to choose in all cultivation paths. Yin Yang looked at the sky and said softly, I don't want to live under someone else's roof. I don't want to be someone's slave. At least, I have to try a path of freedom before I'm completely hopeless. Yin Yang said that he would try, but an unwavering gleam flashed across his eyes. It might be much easier to attach to a sect or a noble family, and it would not be difficult for him to find one with his current cultivation base and ability. However, once he did so, he would unknowingly have the thought of attaching to someone else for safety. It would basically be the fall of the strong's heart. From then on, no matter how great the achievement was, there would always be a hindrance in the bottom of his heart. At least Yin Yang could be sure of one thing. It was absolutely difficult to reach the pinnacle of this world. He would not do things for others. In fact, Yin Yang had such a plan ever since he heard about the celestial luck banner. He would rely on himself and seize it by himself. If it were not for the fact that the celestial luck banner was a unique item in this world, Yin Yang was even confident of creating it. Yin Yang did not deny that the celestial luck banner was the cornerstone of this world's cultivators, and that it was a rare divine item. But did he lack the items that could be called divine items? Whether it was Emmy, the divine edge, or the endless divine art, they were all rare divine items. Yin Yang was confident that what he had would not pale in comparison to the so-called celestial luck banner. I have one last question, Yin Yang said. Loved. The little fatty answered subconsciously. What? What did you say? Yin Yang was bewildered by little fatty's answer. What kind of answer was that? What was it? Little fatty came to his senses and quickly made up for it. Hey, what question did I ask? Where did this celestial luck banner come from? This thing is so mystical. It must have an extraordinary origin. Yin Yang said in a low voice. The celestial luck banner, as the name suggests, is a treasure bestowed by the heavens. Little Fatty was once again confused by Yin Yang's question, only giving an illusory answer after a while. Bestowed by the heavens? If the celestial luck banner is bestowed by the heavens, then it should be a predetermined number. However, when a sect snatches another sect's celestial luck banner, it's obviously obtained by force through its own strength. How can it be bestowed by the heavens? Isn't the saying that it's bestowed by the heavens a lie? Yin Yang said. Chapter 890. Yin Yang did not interrupt and waited for little Fatty to continue, obviously looking forward to the origin of the celestial luck banner. It's been said that the number of celestial luck banners is also fixed. When the celestial luck banner appeared, there were a total of 9,999 banners in the world. No matter when The total number of celestial luck banners will not change. Be it natural or man-made disasters, intentional or unintentional, they will not truly destroy the celestial luck banner. Up to this day, the celestial luck banners all have their own owners. It's impossible for the banner bearers to give them up voluntarily. Later on, if they want it, they can only take it by force. Little Fatty pondered for a long time before saying, "To me, the celestial luck banner is actually like the materialization of an official's seal in the secular world. You'll be treated according to your position. If you don't reach that position, you won't be treated like this. To be more specific, it's like a 7th-class county magistrate and a provincial governor in a novel. The salary between the two must be very different, right? The difference in power is like heaven and earth. The area under their jurisdiction is also like heaven and earth. The third party's attitude towards them will be quite different, won't it? Just tell me the difference directly." Yin Yang was exasperated. "Do I need you to tell me this? I come from that kind of world." An analogy would be more concrete. Qian Duoduo said, "For a person to become a county magistrate, he needs to first learn knowledge, temper, take exams, and be recognized by the superiors. Only then can he accept the appointment and wield power. But there are only so many official positions. If you come to take up the post, what will the county magistrate you replace do? Will he resign? Will he be dismissed? Will he be prosecuted? Or will he be killed? It all depends on the outcome of the game between you and him. That's all." Yin Yang said faintly, "It doesn't have to be so extreme. It's not impossible for the replaced to leave because of a promotion." Little Fatty was stunned for a moment before he finally said dejectedly, "Boss, your idea is unconventional and meaningful, but it's unrealistic and difficult to implement because there's no possibility of promotion with the celestial luck banner." Yin Yang's interest grew as he listened. "Let's put aside the question of promotion for now. That's still far away. Just tell me about the initial pros and cons of getting the celestial luck banner, as well as the direction of application." The little fatty pondered for a while again. After deliberating over his words, he said, "The overall situation seems to be settled after obtaining the celestial luck banner, but there are still many loose ends to deal with. It's not something that can be done once and for all. Take the county magistrate as an example. When you become the county magistrate, you undoubtedly hold the power of life and death within a certain range. However, it will take a certain period of time to truly follow the orders of your superiors and follow the orders of your subordinates. This is because the people under your rule are still the same people, bearing the mark of the original county magistrate in their bones. In other words, even if you snatch the celestial luck banner, the force recognized by heaven will still be the original school, and not you, the actual owner of the celestial luck banner. Therefore, what you have to do at this time is to be recognized by heaven." Yin Yang frowned. "That's exactly what I'm asking. How do I get recognized?" "The process of getting recognized begins when you successfully snatch the celestial luck banner. After a buffer period after you successfully snatch the banner, the highest authority in your territory will send a person in charge of the territory to carry the Golden Radiance celestial luck banner to be assessed. The content of the assessment is to accept the battle test of 3 celestial luck banners of the same level. Only if you can withstand it will the Golden Radiance celestial luck banner erase the original name on the banner you own and change it to the name of your sect. Only then will the celestial luck banner truly become the sect's, and it will continue until the sect is promoted again or defeated." Little Fatty was indeed knowledgeable, recounting these secrets as if he was very familiar with them. Yin Yang caught one of the questions keenly. "Accepting the battle test of 3 celestial luck banners of the same level in succession, there must be something else going on. I think there must be a difference in ranking among the same level. If the 3 schools that are ranked higher are sent to attack, won't it be a futile effort?" Little Fatty stared at Yin Yang for a while in surprise and awe. This boss had not even established his sect yet, but he had already thought of such a far-reaching problem. Of course it won't be too extreme. Although there are rankings within the sects, there are only 9 in total. If you defeat the sect ranked 9th, then only the 6th, 7th and 8th sects can come and attack you. There is also a further assessment standard. The strongest sect in the assessment can only send half of its strength to fight you. The second strongest sect can send 70% of its strength. Even the weakest sect can only send 90% of its strength to attack you. The comprehensive assessment after capturing the banner is the same. If you capture the 6th Celestial Luck Banner, then the 3rd, 4th, and 4th place will be assessed. All the combat power participating in the battle isn't assigned by the sect, but the Golden Palace's special envoy using the Golden Radiance Celestial Luck Banner to select the sect's combatants. This ensures absolute fairness, and there's rarely any favoritism or fraud. Yin Yang grinned. This may not be accurate. What if the challenger defeats any of the top 3 sects? Where would you find 3 assessment sects? Little Fatty choked, grumbling inwardly. You're so careless. If the lower class sects aren't qualified for the assessment, there's still the middle class sections. However, the possibility of this is very small, and it's only passed down in regulations and legends. At least I've never heard of it. Yin Yang asked. Are casualties allowed in such an assessment? No. Martial artists strive for victory by raising their hands and not giving in, showing no mercy on the spot. The difference of a single move can turn the tide of the battle. However, in the vast majority of approved battles, there would be no casualties. This is because those who die in this battle will come back to life under the Golden Radiance banner. Yin Yang's jaw almost dropped. There's such a thing. Resurrection of the dead? Isn't this a joke? Do you think that the Golden Radiance Celestial Luck Banner's power is only limited to increasing one's cultivation base? Its power is far beyond our imagination. Of course, even if one can be resurrected, it doesn't mean that there won't be any enmity. Many enmities arise from this. After all, after dying once, it's inevitable that one will hold a grudge against the one who killed him. Little Fatty chuckled coldly. Competition has never been forbidden between sects, much less killing and vengeance. Qian Duoduo said. All the sects that have obtained the Celestial Luck Banner dare not relax for even a moment in their self-cultivation. They have to guard against the attacks of those red-eyed rogue sects and prepare for the annual ranking competition. Many of the sects that rank outside the top 3 are constantly changing. After all, there are as many sects without Celestial Luck Banners as there is an ocean. While there is a gap between rogue cultivators and the disciples of sects that have lower-class Celestial Luck Banners, it's not impossible to catch up. Therefore, everyone works hard in their cultivation. No one dares to be careless. As if he had guessed Yin Yang's thoughts, Little Fatty said, those who die in the ranking competition won't be resurrected. The Golden Radiance Banner won't pay attention to other battles that don't involve the Celestial Luck Banner. Ah. Yin Yang coughed and asked, if the lower class sect succeeds in the challenge, for example, if the top sect in the lower 9 classes were to be promoted to a middle class sect, then the lower 9 classes would be reduced to 8. What would happen if there's an empty spot? I've never heard of such a thing before. Although there should be such an example before, there's no specific news about it, so no one knows the inside story. The only thing that's certain is that the new replacement, no matter how it's done, is definitely related to the battle. Yin Yang had only listened briefly, but he immediately understood the danger involved. There were only 9,999 Celestial Luck Banners in the entire bound of universe. As for the upper 4 classes, gold, silver, purple, and green, rogue cultivator sects did not even dare to hope for them. Those sects could probably crush them to death just by plucking a strand of hair from their hands. Therefore, while there were 9,999 Celestial Luck Banners in name, only the lowest class ones were in circulation. As for those so-called low-ranked sects, the top 3, and even the top 6, they were all untouchable by the loose cultivators. At most, they could only compete for the last 3 sections. In other words, only the 9th sect had the highest chance of competing for it. 1 spot. On the other hand, how many rogue cultivator sects were there in the world that did not have a Celestial Luck Banner? More precisely, how many such sects were there under the jurisdiction of a palace? Fatty seemed to have mentioned just now that there were at least 20 to 30,000 of them, yet there was only 1 9th place. Such a ratio was even more exaggerated and tragic than an army crossing a single plank bridge. Moreover, even if it was the last ninth-ranked sect, how could they not cultivate with all their might, knowing that they were in an awkward position? After all, they still had the help of the celestial luck banner. After all, their cultivation speed was 6 times faster than rogue cultivators. How could they be pulled down so easily? Even an idiot would know that it was not easy. The so-called chance of promotion was still slim. The probability was less than 1 in 10,000. Chapter 891. Qian Duoduo. What do you plan to do next? Yin Yang asked the fatty. Lin Fan could not help but admit that this little fatty, whom he had just met, was truly a talent. He was a know-it-all, and was familiar with the many stories of the Xianhuang world. Not only that, he was the type of person who knew more than most people. Although Yin Yang had never met anyone else in the Bound of Universe, he could still come to this conclusion. How many official positions were there in a country that had conquered the Bound of Universe? Who would be able to name the duties of all these officials in one go? Perhaps there might be. However, in a place like the Bound of Universe where cultivators were the most important, and the rest of the people were mediocre, it was hard to find them. Yet this fatty had the ability. Not only could he, but he could also figure out something new and draw inferences from it. This was a skill, and a great one at that. Coincidentally, this little fatty was at his wit's end, and had nowhere to go. So Yin Yang had the thought of taking him in as his subordinate. There was absolutely no possibility that someone would arrange for a spy to plot against him at this stage. He had just ascended, and did not know anyone who would target him. Furthermore, he had no ulterior motives. How would the people in this realm know that he had something good on him? As for how to subdue the fatty, it was too easy. This fatty was afraid of death and cowardly. These 2 points were too easy for Yin Yang to exploit. With just a raise of his hand and a glare, the fatty was immediately terrified. He did whatever he was told, and was indescribably obedient. Based on this alone, where else could he find such an excellent subordinate? Whether the fatty was loyal or not was a hidden danger. But Yin Yang believed in his charisma. When Bai Yixue had submitted to him in the past, he had been reluctant as well. Yet, under Yin Yang's inspiration, he had still been completely subdued. With this precedent, there was no need to worry that the fatty would not submit to him sincerely in the future. My plan? The fatty wanted to cry in his heart. What plan can I have? I plan to follow you, but your thoughts are too crazy now. You're just a rogue cultivator who has just ascended. How are you going to feed me? At the very least, you have to let me understand your plan and what you're relying on. Only then can I carefully plan my next step. Yin Yang said. My sect is still lacking a major domo. I have my eyes set on you, and I think highly of you. Qian Duoduo rolled his eyes and said, Where do you have a sect now? Yin Yang replied, It will be built soon. This is a certainty. Qian Duoduo counted on his fingers. Manager, it seemed to be pretty good. It's just that, even if we were to establish a sect now, it would only be the 2 of us. Me being the chief manager sounds good, but who am I in charge of? Could the general manager still manage the sect master? But apart from the sect leader, I'm the only one left. Who cares about me? Was it humorous? What's the point of me being a steward? Chief steward, what a high position. What exactly are they in charge of? Qian Duoduo curled his lips. Since the chief is in charge of the sect's general affairs, he must first manage the sect's resources. Yin Yang said lightly, the sect's wealth, resources, and future transactions. These are all within the authority of the supervisor. Wealth. Once little fatty heard the term, his eyes turned into light bulbs as saliva dripped from the corners of his mouth. He was practically drooling. Money. Little fatty's cheeks quivered, filled with longing and resentment. I love money the most. Yin Yang squinted and said, Love money. That's the easiest thing to do. I dare not boast about other things, but I'm quite wealthy. Little fatty shot him a doubtful gaze. You've just ascended. Even if you're impressive and confident in your original world, have you seen the Bound of Universe's resources? Do you know what's called wealth in this realm? You actually boast that you're wealthy. You're a great apothecary. Yin Yang snorted and rolled his eyes looking at little Fatty's doubtful face. Let's settle our business first, and watch this big brother squash you to death with money. Quick, go register and establish a sect. This is the #1 priority right now. With little Fatty leading the way, it only took them half a day to find the nearest city and enter the city with the bustling crowd. Isn't the Bound of Universe mainly made up of cultivators? Why are there so many ordinary people? Yin Yang asked. With his knowledge, he could tell at a glance that while there were plenty of cultivators here, there were plenty of ordinary people as well. Cough, I've actually forgotten the most important rule. Qian Duoduo seemed to have thought of something when he heard that. His expression was extremely serious. It's these ordinary people who don't know martial arts and have no mystical qi. They're the biggest taboo in the Bound of Universe. Yin Yang replied, Huh? Where did this come from? What's the taboo? The Bound of Universe's first iron law, the first rule of heaven, is that cultivators are strictly forbidden to lay a hand on ordinary people. Those who violate this rule shall be punished with the death of their entire family. Little Fatty Qian Duoduo enunciated each word in a solemn tone. Yin Yang felt lightheaded. Strictly forbidden to lay a hand on ordinary people? Those who violate this rule shall be punished with the death of their entire family? How could it be considered as laying a hand? This concept was a little hard to understand. If you slapped him, it would be considered as laying a hand. If you killed someone, it would also be considered as laying a hand. Even if you took a stalk of vegetables from him, it would still be considered as laying a hand. Could such a small action be punished with the death of his entire family? Is there a more specific way of saying it? Like causing someone to be injured or killed? There must be some specific restrictions. Yin Yang asked. No. Qian Duoduo said. This is the first rule of heaven. It's completely unreasonable and indiscriminate. Even if an ordinary person scolds you, as long as you talk back and retaliate, you'll face the death of your entire family. There was once a cultivator who bought something in the market, just because he gave a silver coin less. The vegetable seller was indignant, and both parties quarreled. It wasn't that the cultivator didn't want to give enough money, but he didn't have much silver with him. His conscience was troubled. In the end, after such a quarrel, the high-level saint-level cultivator was struck to death by lightning when he returned home. Not a single one of his family members survived. Since then, when a cultivator goes out, gold and silver have become an indispensable part of the things they carry with them, regardless of whether they need it or not. It's precisely because they're afraid of encountering such a situation that they'll bring disaster upon themselves and their families when they die. At this moment, Yin Yang could only feel the thunder rumbling above his head. This rule was completely unreasonable and unreasonable. From the bottom of his heart, Yin Yang actually liked the existence of this rule. If it was possible, it would be best not to talk about cultivators bullying ordinary people, not to mention other high-level cultivators. Even with his current cultivation of venerable level, if he were to fight against ordinary people, it would not be a big problem for him to destroy a country all by himself. With the existence of such a heavenly rule, as long as there was a small opening in such a matter, it would be broken immediately. Treating everyone equally like this was the best way to protect the common people's interests. It was the most effective method of suppression. Yes, it did not matter if one was right or not. As long as one committed the offense, only death awaited him. In this way, who in this world would dare to offend it? If one did, death would be the only thing that awaited them. Not only that, it would be the death of their entire family. The person who made this rule is truly admirable. It looks sinister, but it has a profound meaning. It basically eliminates the possibility of many tragedies. Even the chances of taking advantage of loopholes are minuscule. It's difficult to operate. Chapter 892. This is the iron law of the Bound of Universe that has been passed down for tens of thousands of years. The fatty snorted. If you don't believe it, you can argue with an ordinary person. You'll know the pros and cons after you try. Yin Yang exploded at once. Why don't you try? This fatty had sores on his head and pus on the soles of his feet. This was no longer a joke. He was setting himself up for death. Both of them arrived at the registration office of the sections. Yun Yang finally experienced firsthand how intense and cruel the competition between the cultivators of the bound of universe was. Not to mention the schools that already existed. Just these people before him that were packed so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. What were all these people? Just by looking at the people queuing here, there were more than a few hundred people. Did this not mean that there were hundreds of sects waiting to be built? And this was only what he saw before his eyes. A minute reflection of a certain hour in a day. Then, how many sects would be added to the bound of universe in a year? Yun Yang could not help feeling a little dizzy. You want to queue? Nonsense, you don't want to queue? Who are you? The fatty was disdainful. Are you trying to bribe me? Let me tell you. All these officials will have their entire families wiped out if they accept a bribe from a carrot. They don't even have to wait for them to return home. There will be lightning strikes immediately. Yun Yang realized that although there did not seem to be many administrative personnel in this realm, the rules that they had to abide by were really unimaginably strict. He wondered what kind of person it was back then to come up with these rules. Could it be that he was drunk high or high? Otherwise, how could he be so different, fresh and refined, without the slightest bit of shyness? After queuing for about 4 hours, it was finally Yun Yang's turn. He finally managed to get in, but there was only a screen behind the official's desk. He could not even see the person handling the matter. Name: Yun Yang. Gender: male. Occupation? Occupation. The sudden question baffled Yun Yang. The voice inside seemed to be surprised as well. You didn't choose an occupation? Yun Yang was dumbfounded. Choose an occupation? What class should I choose? Panting sounds could be heard from inside. You haven't even chosen your profession. And you've come here to create a sect? No one told me. Yun Yang mumbled. Then has anyone ever told you that you'll get hungry if you don't eat? Will you get thirsty if you don't drink? Will your stomach hurt if you can't poop? In serious cases, people will die. Yun Yang dared not continue the conversation, intending to flee. Come back. Yun Yang, who was already at the door, halted abruptly. He did not know if there were any special restrictions in this place, so it was better to be more orderly. What if he was disobedient and was struck by lightning? Why are you running? Where do you think you're going? Since you don't even know how to choose a profession, you definitely don't know the other procedures, right? Are you going to choose your class now? Yes. Then when you come back, I'll ask you something else and you'll run away. Do you know that what you're doing now is very stupid? Yun Yang felt extremely embarrassed. Ever since he started his career, he was often mentioned. The most common comment about him was supreme wit, the wisdom of the 9 supremes, being as intelligent as a demon, and so on and so forth. He had never thought that he would be called an idiot today. He even had to think that what the other party said was very reasonable, and that he could not refute it. It was a brand new experience that he had never experienced before. Which realm did you actually ascend from, young man? You look rather smart, but you keep doing stupid things. How did you manage to cultivate to the bound of universe with that kind of brain of yours? Could it be that the realm you're in is exceptionally rich in spiritual chi, and anyone can ascend? Or did you accidentally eat a mysterious spiritual ingredient that hasn't been seen for billions of years, and achieve enlightenment overnight? Yun Yang felt like he was going crazy. What's inside this thing? How could there be such sarcasm? Even if what you said is the truth. I'm famous for my intelligence in the realm I'm born in. How could I be treated as a fool here? There was no one else like this. If the people of the Tianxian continent were to find out that their omnipotent, resourceful, far-sighted, and meticulous supreme cloud had been treated as a fool by someone else, and had even been rendered speechless and speechless, how would they react? Yun Yang exited the room, exasperated, his face covered in dirt. Fatty, are you King sincere? Well, what's wrong? Vocation. You pig. How do you register for a sect without a vocation? Oh. Holy shit. You don't have a vocation? Nonsense. Yun Yang was so angry that he did not even want to speak. Little Fatty was also looking at him like he was looking at a weirdo. After a while, both of them walked out with their heads hung low. Not only were they covered in dirt, they looked like they were in dire straits. At the vocation register, Yin-yang had to queue for about 4 hours just like before. The sky was already turning dark when it was finally his turn. You're Yin-yang? Which yin and which yang? Yin as in white clouds, yang as in the sun, or the ram as in the female sheep, or the triumphant yang as in the exalted yang. A sarcastic voice came from inside. Yin-yang was dumbfounded again. What the hell was this thing? Was he purposely showing off his knowledge with such a long speech? Cough. Yin as in white clouds, yang as in the exalted yang. Oh, what vocation do you want to choose? Let me tell you, a person can only choose 7 vocations in his life. Don't choose more, don't choose less. Once you've made up your mind, take big strides forward. If you choose wrongly, you'll be like this for the rest of your life. Do you understand? Understood. Choose then. With a swoosh, a few pieces of paper were tossed out, filled with the names of various vocations. The first page was filled with legitimate professions such as farmers, chefs, tailors, merchants, dentists, shopkeepers, and even bailiffs, coroners, cooks, and other professions were listed. Of course, Yin-yang would not choose such professions. He skipped them and flipped to the second page. The first on the second page was an assassin while the second was a robber. The corners of Yin-yang's lips were twitching. In Tianxian continent, this was a trade that would result in the extermination of an entire family. But it was so open and aboveboard here. Needless to say, he had to choose the first and the second. Swordsman, saberman. Alright, he could choose both as well. Concealed weapons? He had to choose this as well. Wait, this was already 5. The person just said that he could only choose 7. Thinking of this, Yin-yang quickly asked, Sir, does it mean that I can't fight with other weapons if I choose to be a swordsman? You can use your hands and feet. Yin-yang was speechless. He wanted to curse a million times. You've chosen to be a swordsman, what else do you want? Don't tell me that you, a swordsman, don't fight with your sword, and instead want to stink others to death? The voice came from inside. Chapter 893. To be honest, if it had been in the martial world, the fellow opposite him would have been dragged down by Yin-yang and beaten up 8 times over. It was the first time in his life that he had seen such a despicable person with such a sharp tongue. Suppressing his anger, he continued to choose. There were 2 other types. Beast tamer? He had to choose this as well. 6 of them. Medicine master? There was no need to choose with Emmy around. Blacksmith? There was no need to choose even if Emmy was around. Mercenaries? Information? Divine ability? This option seemed to be very high class. Recalling his 9 forms of transformation, Yin-yang chose this one without hesitation. Other than that, he seemed to know quite a few more. However, that person had said before that he could only choose 7 types. There were no more slots. After Yin-yang had made his choice, he held it in his hand and pondered over it. What else could be replaced? This was something that could not be changed in the future. It was a one-time deal, and he had to weigh the pros and cons. He thought for a long time, pondered for a long time, weighed the pros and cons for a long time, and finally gave up. That's all. I won't be exchanging. Dead or alive, this was it. May I ask, sir, can I still change my mind after I've made my choice? You still want to change it? Then why did you choose this in the first place? Do you think this is digging in the mud? If this piece of mud is not suitable, I'll change to another one? Or was he looking for a wife? You want to try another girl if she doesn't look good and isn't useful? Cough, that's not what I meant. Then what do you mean? Do you think your family owns this place? If this line of work isn't good, then change to another line? People like you, let me tell you, you won't make it in any line of work. You can't do anything and you can't eat anything. Yet you're thinking of changing professions. You can't even catch up to eating sh*t if you change professions. Do you know that? Yin-yang was infuriated. Yin-yang had never come across such a despicable person in his entire life. Have you chosen? I'm done. If you're done choosing, why haven't you presented it to me yet? Will you be able to give birth if you leave it down there? It's going to be dark soon, don't you know? Do you think I'm the same as you who doesn't eat food and only eats shit? If you want to wait for the food to be digested, You'll have to wait for others to digest it, and then produce it for you. For you to enjoy in big mouthfuls? Yin Yang was so angry that he was trembling all over. How despicable! How despicable was that? He handed it over with trembling hands. The official took it and said with great dissatisfaction, "What kind of rubbish did you choose? There are only a few of the most common occupations, yet you make it sound like it's a serious life event. What a waste of my time. Useless people doing useless things, wasting my good time. Here." A small purple token was tossed out and landed at Yin Yang's feet with a clang. "Take it, silly child. Being a swordsman or a swordsman is your own play." Then, a gentle gust of wind blew from within, gently pushing Yin Yang out of the door before the door slammed shut with a bang. Yin Yang's handsome face was already livid with rage, almost losing its color. Qian Duoduo saw that his lips were trembling and did not know what had happened. "Boss, what's wrong with you? What happened?" Yin Yang was so angry that he almost broke down. "The people here speak really." His fingers were trembling. "What a bastard." "Sigh, don't take it to heart. Those who work here are basically from the Sacred Heart Palace. These people may not have a high cultivation base, but they have a lot of connections. Even if you have to suffer a little, we can only stare at them. We really can't afford to offend them. But that person's mouth is too despicable. I advise you to let it go. There's really nothing we can do about it. These people are all like that." Qian Duoduo chuckled and said in a low voice, "I'll tell you the truth. 99% of these workers are scum from the Sacred Heart Palace, who have failed in their cultivation. They're not skilled in either literature or martial arts. That's why they're sent to such a remote place to manage chores. But they're still the descendants of the Sacred Heart Palace's cultivators in their bones. They have a lot of connections. Their attitude is bad, because they've been chased out of the Sacred Heart Palace. Naturally, they feel uncomfortable, but they dare not slack off and suffer the wrath of heaven. How can they be nice to us? It's normal, it's really normal." Yin Yang was immediately relieved and said, "I see. But how can the Sacred Heart Palace have such descendants when they're so blessed by nature?" Qian Duoduo said, "No matter where it is, any sacred cultivation ground, paradise, it's inevitable that there will be some disappointing scum. These people are either not talented enough and are naturally not suitable for cultivation, or their natural state of mind is too poor, making the path of cultivation difficult, or, anyway, there's such a group of scum. Their existence is reasonable." Yin Yang agreed. "Indeed, their existence is reasonable. Aren't there also many prodigal children born in the royal family?" Qian Duoduo clapped his hands and said, "Boss, you're absolutely right. That's the reason. It's getting late. Let's find a place to stay first. Shall we come again tomorrow?" Little Fatty suggested. "All right. Come early tomorrow morning and queue up first. I'll come after breakfast. Let me tell you, as the major domo, you have to take care of these things." After a whole day of waiting in line, Yin Yang did not want to queue up in person anymore. Little Fatty's chubby face immediately turned bitter. The major domo. I haven't even applied for the sect, and I'm already appointed? And I'm even doing the work of queuing. What a good treatment." It was noon the next day. Finally, it was Yin Yang's turn. After going through all the information, "Have you come up with a name?" "Yes." "What?" "The Nine Supremes Union." "I have it." "Tower of Nine Supremes?" "I have it too." "Then the Nine Supremes Pavilion?" "I have it." "Then the Nine Supremes School?" "You're planning to go against the Nine Supremes, aren't you? Can you not use such a vulgar name?" Yin Yang sighed. "Please, see if the residence of Nine Supremes has it." If the residence of Nine Supremes did not exist, then it was fate. He could just give it a random name. Residence of Yun, Residence of Yang, or Residence of Green would be acceptable. There was a moment of silence. There really isn't one. How can such a vulgar name not exist?" Yin Yang sighed. "Could it really be fate?" "Have you decided? Isn't it unoccupied?" "You have to confirm it yourself first." "Idiot. Can't you grow some brains?" "I'm sure." "Residence of Nine Supremes then?" "Yes, that's it. I won't change it." "All right, King Hell, you're not human anymore. How can you give such a grand name? Supremes. Supreme's my asterisk. Go to the toilet. A series of mutterings came from inside. The veins on Yin Yang's forehead bulged. He had no other thoughts except to kill. Shouldn't names be grand and grand? Could it really be called Residence of Green? All right. There was a sound from above. Then, the shadow of a flag flew out from behind the screen. On the flag, faint words glowed. Residence of 9 Supremes. The shadow traversed hundreds of feet and landed quietly on Yin Yang. Chapter 894. White Flag. Yin Yang truly felt that he had not checked the almanac when he went out today. What the F***ck? I've just F***king established my sect today, and you're giving me a white flag that represents surrender. Why a white flag? The person above chided. So what if it's a white flag? Do you still want the amethyst flag? What else would a newly established sect give you, if not a white flag? White buttocks. Idiot. When are you going to stop being an idiot? A low chuckle came from the side. I can't believe there's still such an idiot in this world. What a weirdo. Don't ruin the word weirdo. This child should be a bumpkin who has just come up. He's a simpleton who doesn't know anything. Only his looks are passable. Your white buttocks and white buttocks have reminded him that you've done your best. Yin Yang was exasperated. Oh heaven, oh earth. Oh the mighty beings of the faraway galaxy. Please allow me to kill. I really can't stand it. But I still have to. If I don't, I'll be struck by lightning. The lightning will strike. My soul will be destroyed. And I'll be doomed eternally. Yin Yang chanted in his heart. Endure for a moment, calm and tranquil, take a step back. Endure. Endure. The word endure is like a knife on your head. Let his rage burn in your heart. Let go when you have to, let go when you can. I will endure. Why aren't you leaving yet? A voice came from inside. Are you waiting for me to treat you to a meal? To admire your white buttocks? White flag fluttering. Yin Yang was exasperated again as he walked out, clenching his teeth. A conversation came from behind. This idiot must be pissed to death by me today. Look at how he dares to be angry, but doesn't dare to speak up. How delightful. Ha ha ha. My favorite thing to do now is to torment these idiots. This is our greatest pastime and benefit. Ha ha ha. A burst of laughter rang out. A voice then came. Who's next? Hurry up, don't dawdle. Yin Yang walked out, holding his stomach. If he did not, his stomach would probably explode from anger. The 9 Supremes, Supreme Cloud and Supreme Wit, had never been teased and humiliated like this before. What happened today could not wash away the humiliation that filled his face, even if he were to pour the waters of 3 rivers and 5 lakes. The successful registration of a sect was a joyous occasion, but Yin Yang did not feel the slightest bit of joy. Instead, he felt like he was about to explode and needed to vent. Little Fatty's face lit up as he ran over excitedly. Big bro, did you succeed? Yin Yang answered weakly, success. Aya, that's great. What should we call our group? Yin Yang rolled his eyes. Let me catch my breath first. After a while, Yin Yang caught his breath and said, The Residence of 9 Supremes. Residence of 9 Supremes? Little Fatty Qian Duo was beaming with joy. What a domineering name. The Residence of 9 Supremes. Haha. As the name suggests, it has 9 supreme leaders, right? Then who am I? You're the manager. Chief Steward. Who does he count as? General Manager, he is the General Manager. It's not the Supreme? No duh. The little fatty was in a daze. He said with a sense of loss, It's not Supreme. Yin Yang sighed. It's fine if you want to be the Supreme. However, every time there's a mission, you have to go personally. You have to kill and rob. You have to risk your life. You have to go through water and fire. As long as there's danger, you have to go. Where there's danger, you have to be at the front line. Ha! If you don't take the lead, how can you become the Supreme? On the contrary, the Major Domo is in charge of logistics. You manage money, people, channels, and resources. The entire wealth of the Residence of 9 Supremes is in your hands. Actually, your main role is to earn money, to make the Residence of 9 Supremes the wealthiest force in the world. To become a real Qian Duo is your ultimate role. Do you understand now? Although you're not the Supreme, in this Residence of 9 Supremes, other than me, you have the highest authority. Yin Yang guided him patiently, trying his best to seduce him. Little Fatty's eyes shone as he listened, his tongue licking his lips. How about this? I'll give you a chance. If you really want to be the supreme, I can make an exception and let you be supreme money, in charge of buying lives. If you don't want to be supreme, be Major Domo Qian. Yin Yang said. Choose one of the two. Qian Duo sprung up. I want to be Major Domo Qian. All right then, my Major Domo Qian. From this moment on, you officially take up the position. It's worth celebrating. I'll give you a chance, treat me to a meal. Where's the money? What money? Little Fatty wanted to cry. I'm the Major Domo, I have so much authority. Even if our sect is just a newly established sect, there must be something I can manage. Even if you don't give me money, you can give me something else. Whatever it is, I have to manage something. Yin Yang thought about it. All right, you can manage this first. When you have no money, when you need it, use this to exchange. A spatial ring was tossed into Qian Duoduo's chubby hand. Qian Duo pursed his lips. You're just an insignificant character, who has just ascended. What good stuff can you have? At most, your cultivation base is slightly higher. You've probably used up all the resources you've harvested in the past. How dare you talk big now, saying that you can use this to exchange, when you have no money? Don't you think you're biting your tongue? He took a look and saw that there weren't many things inside. There were only a dozen or so sparkling purple items. What is this? Qian Duo had already retrieved a piece of it with his deific consciousness, and held it in his palm. Then Qian Duo was stunned. His mouth was agape and his tongue was tied. He was speechless and dumbfounded. In the palm of his hand, there was a purple crystal that shone with a soft brilliance. As soon as this crystal appeared, the density of the surrounding spiritual qi suddenly increased. In just a moment, it had become unimaginably dense and shocking. Little Fatty's brain had short-circuited. He had thought that Yin Yang would not have anything good. But when he took it out, it was actually such an earth-shattering, mystical treasure. Only he knew that there were more than a dozen of such treasures in this spatial ring. Little Fatty was stunned on the spot, unable to regain his composure. Suddenly, someone beside him cried out, "Ethereal amethyst?" The volume of the voice was deafening, shaking the heaven and earth. Then, an inexplicable commotion ensued. Countless pairs of eyes were focused on the item in Little Fatty's hand. Little Fatty kept the ethereal amethyst at once, feeling his heart thumping wildly, and his palms breaking out in cold sweat. His two beady eyes darted around in fear. How could he take out such a precious thing in front of so many people? Was he stunned? What a huge mistake I've made, my God. I'm afraid there's going to be some big trouble. It's definitely more troublesome than the rhymed orchid. Let's go quickly. Chapter 895. Yin Yang pulled him along and both of them swiftly walked out of the city. However, countless pairs of eyes were fixed on the duo's retreating silhouettes, the corners of their mouths curling into a sinister smirk. How could there be such fools in this world? Holding the ethereal amethyst, and admiring it on the streets. What was the difference between that and a naive child walking around a busy city with a gold ingot in his arms? He had seen his fair share of suicidal weirdos throughout his life of roaming the martial world, but it was the first time he had seen someone as suicidal as these two fellows. It was a marvelous sight, a miraculous encounter, and a fortuitous encounter. My strange fate has been decided. Both of them sped along the way, swiftly leaving the city and returning to the wilderness. Little Fatty finally heaved a sigh of relief when they entered a forest. He could still feel his face burning as he said guiltily, "Boss, it's my fault. I really deserve to die for causing so much trouble." Yin Yang was not bothered by it. "Wrong. Perhaps you're wrong, but it's only 30%. Your mistake was within my calculations. It's not a big deal if it's just a mistake," he said faintly. "Since I've predicted that the treasure would be exposed, what might happen next would naturally be within my calculations as well. A child walking around the city with a precious treasure would inevitably attract covetous eyes. But it's also a good chance for me to measure the weight of the so-called martial artists in the bound of universe." Even after listening to Yin Yang's comforting words, Qian Duoduo was still ashamed. He had just been appointed as the major domo, and it was his first time accepting the sect's resources. Yet he had already caused such a huge trouble. He was truly inhumane. Although his boss was not displeased and was comforting him instead, this was clearly a grave mistake, one that could lead to the destruction of the sect, the ultimate mistake. Alright. What we should think about now is where to put our residence of 9 Supremes. This is the base camp of the residence of 9 Supremes in the bound of universe, a place of prosperity. We mustn't neglect it. Yin Yang said. Little Fatty took out the map he had just bought and studied it with his head lowered, eager to make amends for his mistake. It's not hard to choose the location of the headquarters. The little Fatty mumbled as he looked at the map. Although that white flag doesn't have the effect of being blessed by Providence, there's still something quite useful about it. No matter where you choose the headquarters of the sect, you can transform that place into whatever you want. It's quite mysterious. Is there such a good thing? Yin Yang's eyes shone. If the white flag had such a magical effect, it would be an extraordinary item indeed. It can only be used once. The little Fatty sighed. Moreover, it can only change its appearance. It doesn't have any actual effects. It's the so-called goods for show. Yin Yang stroked his chin. That's more than enough. However, what should he build the headquarters of his sect? Imitating the residence of 9 Supremes' former style? It was grand, but it was a little too eye-catching. Moreover, the residence of 9 Supremes had already become his personal treasure. Would it not be superfluous to replicate it? Before Yin Yang could figure it out, he heard a rustling sound coming from behind him. It was coming at a high speed, heading straight for where the two of them were. A rough voice spoke. Little brat still thinking of running? Yin Yang's gaze turned cold. Without another word, he pulled out his saber and charged forward, turning into a streak of light along with his saber as he charged forward. After a day and a night, Yin Yang landed in a forest with little Fatty in his arms, panting heavily. Both of them were extremely exhausted and battered. Yin Yang had the support of Emmy's vitality, so it was more of his physical exhaustion than his combat power. However, he was still the main fighting force after all, so his overall combat power was reduced by 30%. Little Fatty, who could be considered as the secondary fighting force, looked increasingly ashamed. Boss, it's all because of my momentary carelessness and momentary distraction that I've implicated you. You've already killed 40 to 50 people now, cough cough. Yin Yang heaved a ragged breath and laughed. Do you know how to speak properly, child? What you should be saying is, because of your momentary carelessness, more than 30 groups of people have come to us. And there will be more coming, one after another. Yin Yang had predicted the beginning of the battle, and that he would be able to fight the ambushers, and even have the strength to spare. However, he had not expected the bound of universe's cultivators to be so crazed in their pursuit of the Eastern Amethyst. They were so obsessed with it that they would not rest until they were dead. It had only been a day and a night, but both of them had been ambushed more than 30 times. Fortunately, the news had not spread for long. Those who had rushed over after hearing the news did not have a high cultivation base. The highest cultivation base among them was only a 4th level honor. However, it was this person who made Yin Yang realize something clearly. The 4th level honor here was truly powerful. Compared to Yin Yang's current 3rd level honor, the disparity was extremely huge. It was not as small as the difference between a level in Tianxian continent. The difference was like heaven and earth, like the difference between heaven and earth. In this series of battles, Yin Yang could finish off 3rd level honor cultivators, who were on the same level as Yin Yang within a few moves without using any supplementary skills. He could hack them to death with his saber alone. However, Yin Yang had exerted everything he had against a 4th level honor, almost using up all his trump cards. Only then did he finally injure his opponent so severely that he could no longer fight. It was not that Yin Yang did not want to finish off his opponent in one go, but he was already riddled with injuries, and his deific consciousness was almost depleted. He could no longer fight, even if he wanted to. Here, little Fatty Qian Duoduo had to be commended for jumping out at that delicate moment to save the situation, and finish off the fourth level honor, who was on the verge of death. Little Fatty must not think that he was taking advantage of the situation. Although he had indeed taken advantage of the situation, it was not an easy one. Little Fatty was only a second level honor now. If he had met a fourth level honor on a normal day, the latter would not even need to make a move. Just their aura and coercion alone would be enough to subdue Little Fatty. Little Fatty was under extreme pressure to strike at such a critical juncture, especially when the opponent was an ace cultivator, who was on the brink of death. It was usually when the cultivator was at his most perilous. Who knew if the opponent had left behind a final trump card, or a move to perish together with the opponent? Perhaps it was Little Fatty's luck, or perhaps the timing of his appearance was too ingenious. In short, the fourth level honor had perished on the spot with a single strike. After this battle, Yun Yang came to a conclusion that he had to admit. It was probably rather difficult to kill someone of a higher level in the bound of universe. Above fourth level honor was Saint. By then, the gap would be even greater. In other words, when one was a fourth level honor, it was basically impossible to kill a saint. There was no room for luck. Chapter 896. The martial artist's levels here were even stricter. No matter how talented you were, no matter what kind of ever-changing divine ability you had, it was simply wishful thinking for you to kill someone who was a whole level higher than you. Take Yin Yang's battle for example. Even though he had a divine weapon in hand and the advantage of sneak attacks, he had to fight a long battle of attrition with all his trump cards before he could barely exhaust the other party. In the end, he still needed Little Fatty's final strike to kill a fourth level honor. It was difficult to understand the bitterness in his heart, unless he was the one involved. A thought flashed across Yun Yang's mind. If the fourth level honor had not taken the two of them seriously at the beginning of the battle, and had not killed Little Fatty at once, perhaps the outcome of the battle would have been rewritten. If that was the case, the residence of 9 Supremes could not be opened anymore. This venerable and the major domo would have gone to the King of Hell together. At least, the major domo would definitely go to the King of Hell. Yun Yang was not confident that he could protect himself and Little Fatty at the same time then. In reality, there weren't many Xiozha that registered a sect that could live until they established their own sect. Those who could build their own sects and die of old age were not many either. As for those who could truly develop their sects, not only were there not many of them, there were also very few of them. After these people died, the white flag image would automatically fly back. Yes, the account would be closed. Of course, those who could survive and seize the celestial luck banner, cough. As for now, they were being chased by 2 fourth level honor, and were in the midst of a desperate escape. We're being chased by dozens of people, Little Fatty cried. And you've really killed a lot of people. The only thing we can be sure of now is that our troubles are getting worse. Yun Yang snorted coldly without commenting. Little Fatty counted with his fingers. Up until now, boss, you've killed a total of 47 people, 29 of whom were rogue cultivators. This can basically be ignored. The remaining 18 people, on the other hand, have celestial luck banners rising after their deaths to prove their identities. The 16 black celestial luck banners are fine, but there are 2 green celestial luck banners. Do you know what this means? We've offended at least 10 sects with celestial luck banners. All the sects with celestial luck banners within 10,000 miles have been offended by us. And it's only been a day. Little Fatty grimaced and wanted to cry, but no tears came out. However, Yun Yang could not be blamed for this. If he had not lost control and revealed the ethereal amethyst, would he have gotten himself into such a huge mess? Could Yun Yang kill so many people? In the end, the root cause was Fatty. Fatty's heart was about to shatter from fear. If it were not for this knowledge, Fatty might have carried Yun Yang and run away when he was dealing with the 4th level honor, instead of killing him in a rage. They had already caused trouble. Once the sect found out that they were the culprits, then they would truly never have a day of peace. What's wrong with that? Yun Yang, on the other hand, was quite open-minded. I'll offend them sooner or later. There's no difference in the outcome. It's nothing at all. To him, That was indeed the case. Those who should be killed had to be killed sooner or later. It was really only a matter of time. Our priority now isn't to avoid being hunted down, but to find a place to stay. Yin Yang said. Then we'll recruit. You said that's the ethereal amethyst? The ethereal amethyst. Of course it's the ethereal amethyst. Little Fatty perked up at the mention of it. It's a priceless treasure. Isn't this thing called the Eastern amethyst? Yin Yang asked. Strange. For example, we're both humans, but you're called Yin Yang, and I'm called Qian Duo Duo. But in the eyes of demons or beasts, aren't we all humans? Little Fatty rolled his eyes. Is it strange to have a few different names for the same thing? Yin Yang was speechless. He had actually been lectured by this little Fatty, and even thought that he had a point, and could not refute it. This was ridiculous. The ethereal amethyst is a dream item for cultivation that cultivators yearn for. Little Fatty stroked the spatial ring on his finger contentedly, his expression mesmerized as if he was caressing the beautiful ethereal amethyst. What's there to yearn for? Dream item? Yin Yang scoffed. It's just an energy crystal that contains a lot of energy. After absorbing the spiritual qi in it, it'll still be useless. It can't escape the fate of turning into dust and vanishing into the dust. Absorbed completely? Turning into dust. Little Fatty stared at Yin Yang dumbfounded. Big brother. You use the ethereal amethyst like this? What's wrong with that? Big brother, don't ever say that again. If a high-level cultivator finds out, he'll definitely beat you to death and drown you in their spit. He'll be condemned by everyone and die of 1,000 diseases. Little Fatty's expression was filled with grief and indignation. He wailed as if he was going to die. What a waste of God's gifts. He looks so smart, but he's actually such an unwise fool. Why did I follow such a person? The ethereal amethyst is rare and hard to come by. It's not only because it contains a lot of energy, but the main reason is that as long as it's worn, it'll automatically attract the spiritual qi of heaven and earth to assist in cultivation. If a piece of ethereal amethyst were to absorb the spiritual qi within, it can only supply a beginner honor cultivator for a few days at most. However, if it's worn, it can continuously absorb spiritual qi. In other words, in the same cultivation environment, the spiritual qi surrounding you will always be much more than the spiritual qi around others. At least, it'll be more than twice as much. Little Fatty's cheeks were trembling from the heartache. Although using the ethereal amethyst like this will still deplete the crystal, as long as it's not overused, a piece of ethereal amethyst can be used for 100 years before its energy is completely depleted. Such a rare treasure, you actually sucked it dry in one breath. How could you bear to do that? Also, from what you've said, you've given me more than 12 pieces of ethereal amethyst. This proves that you've overused the crystal more than once. Not just one piece, but many pieces? Little Fatty's gaze was like he was about to devour someone, as if he wanted to take a few bites out of Yin Yang to vent his anger. Amethyst. Yin Yang rubbed his nose, feeling a little embarrassed. He had used it like this before. A piece of ethereal amethyst had indeed been used up within a few days. It was similar to what Little Fatty had said. It turned out that this thing actually had such a great effect. He had underestimated it. A lack of knowledge was a flaw. This saying had been reflected time and time again, since a certain supreme had come to this realm. We still have 10 pieces of ethereal amethyst here. 10 pieces of ethereal amethyst, and we can recruit 10 ace cultivators. Qian Duo Duo was brimming with confidence. Chapter 897. Little Fatty said with certainty. With just this, it'll be a piece of cake to recruit 10 experts above level 4 supremacies. Boss, your residence of 9 supremes can be built at any time. I'm starting to miss the crystals you've wasted. How could you do that? 4th level honor. To be honest, Yin Yang was rather dissatisfied with this level. It was too low. It was absolutely impossible to charge for the lower class celestial luck banner, with a few 4th level honor experts. A saint was more like it. Yin Yang raised his eyebrows. Can't you say something else? I can use my crystals however I want. Are you sure it's so simple? Aren't you being too naive? Fatty chuckled. It's really that simple. As long as a contract is signed, no one will go against the contract before the crystals are depleted. In other words, they won't go against the contract for at least 100 years. Sai, what I mean by success, and what I mean by you being naive, is your understanding of my purpose of building the residence of 9 Supremes. If it's only to recruit experts, I really wouldn't have come to you. What I need are brothers who can work together and share the same virtues, not thugs who work hard for a piece of ethereal amethyst. Subordinates like that can be loyal to me for a piece of ethereal amethyst, but who knows if they won't stab me in the back for greater benefits. The sect I'm building is meant to soar straight into the 9 heavens. Yin Yang said casually. Huh? Soar straight into the 9 heavens? Qian Duo was stunned and asked carefully. May I ask the final destination? The short-term goal should be at least at the level of the Eastern Celestial Palace. Yin Yang thought about it, and felt that he should be more conservative, and not be too arrogant. After all, he had just arrived. Fatty's head shook and he plopped onto the ground, saying in a trembling voice, Big brother, stop talking first. I'm dizzy, I'm so dizzy. From the beginning, Fatty could tell that this new boss of his seemed to be unusual. Not only did he not follow the usual path, he had endless tricks up his sleeves, and his vision was also unusually accurate. He could be said to be far-sighted. Other than the shortcoming of not being familiar with the bound of universe, everything else about him was admirable. He also knew that his boss had great ambitions. However, little Fatty didn't expect this person's ambition to be so great. It was boundlessly huge, at the level of the Eastern Celestial Palace. And at the very least, why don't you go ride a donkey instead? At the very least. And what the hell was that short-term goal? Do your parents know that you have such great ambitions? If you're so good at thinking, just go straight to the heavens. Just as he was deep in thought, Yin Yang hummed in acknowledgement and stood up. Standing at the peak, he looked at a spot of land surrounded by mountains and said faintly, I think that place is not bad. Surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, one peak stands out. Let's go over and take a look. If you think it's good, let's go there. As he spoke, he had already fluttered away. Once we've decided on the location, you'll have to think of a way to sell these 10 pieces of ethereal amethysts and build up the foundation. I don't want to. Little Fatty panicked. That was the ethereal amethyst. How many people don't get to see it in their entire lives? Now that we have it, you actually want to sell it? This is funding the enemy, you bastard. If you're so great, just go to the heavens. Don't trample on my weak soul in this mortal world. I can't take it. Boss, let's discuss this. Can we not sell the ethereal amethysts? What? Not sell? Where are we going to get the money if we don't buy it? How are we going to build a sect without money? If we can't build a sect, how are we going to talk about grand goals? Besides, I've only given you 10 pieces. You don't think that's all there is, do you? Huh? How dare you call me an idiot? Who are you calling an idiot? I'm an idiot. As long as you still have the ethereal amethysts, I'm willing to be an idiot. Do you really have more? What the F***ck are you talking about? Tell me quickly, roughly how much spiritual jade can a piece of ethereal amethyst be exchanged for? If so many ethereal amethysts were to appear in the market, wouldn't it devalue? Yin Yang now knew that the bound of universe's cultivator's currency was spiritual jade and spiritual pearls. There were 4 grades, lower, middle, upper, and supreme. Middle grade spiritual jade was equivalent to 100 lower grade spiritual jade, while upper grade was equivalent to 100 middle grade. Supreme grade spiritual jade was the rarest of them all, and was equivalent to 10,000 upper grade spiritual jade. The higher the grade of the spiritual jade, the higher the demand. In other words, 10,000 upper grade spiritual jade was actually not as good as 1 supreme grade spiritual jade. However, the ones that were usually used for circulation were lower grade spiritual jade. For example, the ones that Lei Dongtian had given him were lower grade. As for the spiritual pearls, they were merely the fragments of spiritual jade. They were only circulated in the hands of ordinary people and exchanged for gold and silver. A piece of ethereal amethyst can probably be sold for about 3,000 pieces of upper-grade spiritual jade. It definitely won't devalue. This thing has a price but no supply. No matter how much you have, you'll only be fighting to buy it. Little Fatty said uncertainly. Only 3,000 upper-grade spiritual jade? That's not much. 3 pieces of ethereal amethysts can't even be exchanged for 1 supreme-grade spiritual jade. I thought it was worth more. Yin Yang was slightly dissatisfied with the number. Big brother, do you think that just anyone has 3,000 upper-grade spiritual jade? Ordinary transactions would never use upper-grade spiritual jade as a normal equivalent, alright? 3,000 upper-grade spiritual jade is really not a small amount. Although ethereal amethysts are precious and can be called a dream item, they're still a consumable item after all. This price tag is about right. Little Fatty expressed his sincere disdain towards Yin Yang's understanding of the prices of goods in this world. As for supreme-grade spiritual jade, ethereal amethysts have appeared before, but supreme-grade spiritual jade has never appeared before. What do you think? Cough, it seems that 10 pieces are enough. It's more than enough. This is definitely an unusually large amount of wealth. Yin Yang did a rough calculation after listening to him. 1 piece of upper-grade spiritual jade was equivalent to 10,000 pieces of lower-grade spiritual jade. 3,000 pieces of upper-grade spiritual jade was equivalent to 30 million pieces of lower-grade spiritual jade? 30 million. Oh f***ck. That was quite a lot after calculating. Moreover, this is the previous market price. It's been a long time since ethereal amethysts have appeared in the market. Little Fatty was brimming with confidence, his eyes gleaming with a golden gleam. As long as I'm given time and opportunity, especially now when the news of the ethereal amethyst's sudden appearance in this world has exploded, I can definitely use these 10 pieces of ethereal amethysts to build a million-man city made entirely of lower-grade spiritual jade. Boss, how much more do you have? Little Fatty asked in a fawning manner. The Little Fatty could vaguely feel that this was a wonderful situation. Judging by the boss's tone, the storage ring that he had given him before was clearly just a drop in the bucket. Did that not mean that he still had a considerable amount of ethereal amethysts with him? Oh my god! This piece of information isn't just explosive, it's simply world-shaking, world-shocking, unprecedented, and unprecedented. Little Fatty felt that if he did not get to the bottom of this, he would not be able to die in peace. Chapter 898. A cough, it's enough, it's more than enough. Why would I need so much, especially the 2 pieces in my pants? It's too extravagant, it's a blasphemy. Little Fatty was a little embarrassed. Scram. Yes. Little Fatty did not hold a grudge against a certain Supreme's reprimand. Instead, he wanted to roll a few times to show his loyalty. Yin Yang was very satisfied with the location of the sect. After shaking off all the pursuers, Yin Yang used another 2 days to make sure that the surroundings were safe. Finally, he confirmed that the sect would be built in the boundless mountains. Let's do it here. Yin Yang closed his eyes to think about what he wanted his sect to look like. Easy to defend and hard to attack was definitely the first requirement. Beautiful, generous, and so on. There was no need for such things at the moment. It would be clean and elegant with sufficient spiritual chi. Right, there had to be sufficient space to cultivate or battle. This was a must. Little Fatty disguised himself and ran away like a wisp of smoke after changing his appearance. There was nothing for him to do here for the time being. Making money was his main job. Yin Yang was not worried that Little Fatty would run away with the money. It was just a small amount anyway. Yin Yang did not mind if Little Fatty really ran away. It was really just a drop in the ocean. If Little Fatty returned after completing his mission, however, he would be a great help in the future. What he was considering now was how to plan and handle the terrain of the mountain in front of him. The silhouette of the white flag was in his hands. Yin Yang turned into a cloud and rose with the wind. He chanted in his heart, sketching out the shape of the mountains and rivers he wanted. When he reached a height of 10,000 feet, he flung it down. Rumble! The ground beneath him suddenly shook, the ground cracking and the mountains collapsing. In just a moment, the landscape had changed beyond recognition. Yin Yang stood high in the sky, looking down at the thousands of miles of mountains and rivers beneath his feet. He did not slack off, manipulating his will to change the landscape bit by bit, gradually turning it into what he imagined it to be. As his imagination gradually became reality, he could not help feeling shaken. A mountain rose from the ground. At the peak of the mountain, 8 smaller peaks stood on its left and right, forming a faint circular defense line to guard the northernmost peak. Among the 9 peaks was a large piece of flat land. On the 9 peaks, there were similar flatlands. These were all reserved for the martial arts arena. Since it was called the residence of 9 supremes, it was only natural that there would be 9 peaks dedicated to the world. Usually, the 9 leaders would each occupy a place, coordinating with each other from a distance. Once something happened, they would be able to gather quickly with a long howl. Also, the arrangement of the 9 mountains seemed to contain a formation that supported both offense and defense. Complemented by the current environment that was closest to nature, it could be said to be the most natural formation. With this as the foundation, the surrounding mountains and valleys were naturally pushed far away. The topography of the residence of 9 supremes stood out from the rest. The rest of the space was reserved for construction. The sect members were the foundation of the sect, so it was only natural that enough land for various types of buildings had to be reserved. Yun Yang already had a rough idea of what he wanted and what kind of building he needed. All he had to do was to perfect it later. At this point, the construction of the sect's foundation was nearing its end. This was probably the effect of the white flag, but it was already enough to shock Yun Yang. A mere wave of the white flag could have such a great effect and change the world in such a short time. This was only a flag, and it was the lowest level among all the known sect's celestial luck banners. The white flag that was said to be the most useless. Watching the white flag's silhouette slowly fade and finally turn into a wisp of green smoke, completely disappearing before him, Yun Yang understood that this was the only use of the flag. In the end, it would only leave a mark on him. However, this was already a great power that could shock the world. What a thing! It really deceives the world and changes the heaven and earth. Although there was no other use for this change other than changing the landscape of the mountains and rivers, this alone was enough to shake the world. It was difficult for a human to achieve. No matter how profound a person's cultivation base was, how powerful he was, he could only achieve destruction when it came to the mountains and rivers. It would never be as good as moving the mountains and changing the land beyond recognition. What's left is to recruit soldiers and buy horses. Yun Yang mumbled to himself, I'd rather have nothing than have something shoddy. The residence of 9 supremes had always been Yun Yang's greatest obsession. As for whether or not he could gather the new 9 supremes, Yun Yang did not care much. To him, it did not matter even if he could not gather them. After all, as long as he was here, it meant that his 9 supremes brothers were all here. No matter how many people came in the future, no matter who they were, Yun Yang would not give them titles like Supreme Earth, Supreme Flame, or Supreme Wind. Calling him Supreme Money with Little Fatty earlier was just a joke, but it was also another option for Qian Duoduo to become one of the new 9 supremes. One's fate in life depended on one's own choices. It was fate that had nothing to do with anyone. Now that the sect's basic landscape has been built, it's time to reinforce it and set up the defensive structures. Yun Yang thought to himself. This kind of thinking was understandable and reasonable. Once the basic topography was completed, it would be nothing more than a fortress in the desert. It looked good, but it was useless. Once it encountered a battle between experts, it would suffer a slight impact and be unable to continue. Perhaps before the battle ended, the entire topography would be destroyed. Therefore, it was absolutely necessary to set up a mountain defense formation. As Yun Yang pondered, he suddenly heard a voice that was filled with rage and grievance coming from beneath his feet. Who's up there? What kind of bastard could do such a filthy thing that's so wicked that it's fuming with smoke and giving birth to a son without a penis? The voice was filled with unusual anger and manic agitation. Then, somewhere outside the 9 peaks, a disheveled human head popped out from a pile of rubble that was filled with smoke and dust. The person's original color could not be discerned from his clothes, which were extremely dirty and messy. Only his eyes looked as if they were about to spit fire. Sherwuchen was enraged. He was utterly enraged. He had been injured by his enemies, who were pursuing him from all over the world due to their immense influence. He had been hiding from place to place with severe injuries, until he came here, and was lucky enough to shake off his pursuers. What was even more surprising was that there was a hidden ground meridian underneath. Sherwuchen was overjoyed and dove straight down, using the spiritual chi of the ground meridian to heal his injuries. However, the injuries he had sustained previously were too severe, and had been delayed for a long time, causing his condition to deteriorate. He had only managed to recover 30% of his injuries after 3 years. Initially, he was meditating in seclusion to heal his wounds when suddenly, the mountains shook and the earth turned upside down. The veins of the earth changed in an instant. He was originally underground, but he was forcefully uprooted, and then buried by countless boulders. Please forgive me. As for me establishing a sect here, I naturally have my own considerations. I don't need to report this to you. Sherwuchen unsheathed his sword with a clang and said loudly, according to the rules of the martial world, the stronger one is the king, and the bigger the fist, the bigger the reason. If you win, then I'm in the wrong, and I'll turn around and leave. But if you lose, hurry up and compensate for the loss of my earth vein. I don't want your life. Hurry up and scram. Find another place to establish your sect. Yin Yang stared at the fellow before him with interest. This guy was a character with some principles, and he was quite straightforward. He was not overbearing and gave people leeway, which was rare and commendable. Yin Yang asked, "What is your cultivation base?" Sherwuchen said angrily, "If I had recovered my original cultivation base, do you think you'd still have the right to talk to me? But even if my meridians are damaged and sealed, my injuries have yet to recover, and my combat power is less than 10%. I still have the strength to fight. Young fellow, you've really picked up a big bargain this time." Yin Yang nodded and said, "You're very frank with your words. I'm very pleased. Instead of a simple battle, why don't we have a big bet and determine the winner and loser?" Sherwuchen asked, "What kind of bet? What kind of bet?" Yin Yang smiled and said, "Since we're talking about a big bet, of course, we have to bet on each other's future and fate. If you lose, you have to join my sect immediately, never leaving, never forsaking, and never changing your mind. If I lose, I'll give you a piece of ethereal amethyst in addition to repairing the earth vein and handing over this place to you. What do you think?" As he said this, Yin Yang looked into Sherwuchen's eyes with an indifferent expression. Lord Supreme Cloud was all alone now, and could not wait to recruit. Now that this fellow had come knocking on his door, it was only natural that he would try to recruit him. Ethereal amethyst? Sherwuchen's eyes lit up at once, and he could not help licking his lips. If he had the ethereal amethyst, why would he still need the earth vein? As he thought about it, the greed in his heart surged, and he could no longer suppress it. He then asked with uncertainty, "You have the ethereal amethyst? Are you really betting on this?" Yin Yang said faintly, "If I don't, how is the bet going to work?" Sherwuchen pondered for a moment and said, "If that's the case, we don't have to fight anymore. As long as you give me a piece of ethereal amethyst, I'll never bother you again. This matter will end here and be written off. What do you think?" Yin Yang said, "Nothing much. This is all my effort, and there's no justice to speak of. Compared to your suggestion, I prefer a big bet. Are you afraid of losing?" Sherwuchen smiled conceitedly and said, "Although I'm injured and my combat strength is lacking, I still have my foresight and experience. Your cultivation base is far from mine, so how can a battle like this be fair? If I really hurt you and take your ethereal amethyst, not only will I look unkind, I won't be able to bear it. Why don't you give me a piece of ethereal amethyst, and we can be friends? There's no need to fight anymore. How about I promise you something else? If you need anything in the future, you can ask for my help, and I'll do it within my capabilities. What do you think?" Yin Yang narrowed his eyes and said, "Nothing much. The battle hasn't started yet, and there's no winning or losing. How can it be said that you've won and I've lost? If you really hurt me then, it'll mean that I've lost the bet. You'll have vented your anger, and you'll be able to get your hands on the earth vein and the ethereal amethyst. Why not? If I insist, I'll have no regrets even if I lose. Sure, Wuchen said angrily. Why are you so stubborn? You've disturbed my healing, so it's reasonable for me to be angry. However, I understand that you don't know that I'm down there, so even if I'm angry, I have no intention of taking it out on you. Although asking for a piece of ethereal amethyst as compensation is a little too much, I'm still a saint-level cultivator after all. Plus, I'm not taking advantage of you too much by giving you a favor. Do you really want me to beat you up? I, Sure Wuchen, am not an unreasonable person, so I won't do something like this. Yin Yang nodded. I see. You're a righteous man indeed. Yin Yang's evaluation of this person rose a notch. He had tossed out the matter of the ethereal amethyst to test this person's character. Yin Yang was not someone who would accept just anyone. If this person harbored evil thoughts, Yin Yang would not allow him to join the residence of 9 Supremes no matter how high his cultivation base was, even if he begged on his knees. However, this person was able to restrain himself despite his greed. His bottom line was unusually clear, and he did not cross the line. Yin Yang agreed with this in his heart. Chapter 900. But you haven't fought me yet. How am I supposed to believe that you're stronger than me? Yin Yang said. What if you're just bluffing? Do you think my ethereal amethysts are easy to come by? You want to take them away with just a few words. What a great deal of sincerity. Sure Wuchen was enraged. I, Sure Wuchen, am a hot-blooded man. Why would I lie to you? Go ask around and find out what kind of person I, the Triautum swordsman, am. When have I ever slapped myself in the face? Yin Yang said nonchalantly. Can't a hot-blooded man lie? There were plenty of scammers in this world. Besides, are you famous? Why haven't I heard of Sure Wuchen's name before? Also, are you really Sure Wuchen? Sure Wuchen's hair was standing on end, his eyes wide with anger. Looks like you've made up your mind to fight me? Yin Yang shrugged. You haven't agreed to the bet. Why would I fight you for no reason? I care about the bet, not who you are, your conditions, or anything else about you. He didn't know if he should fight or not, and he felt aggrieved if he left. Moreover, this fellow in front of him could infuriate him to death with his words. Sure Wuchen was on the verge of a mental breakdown. He gritted his teeth and said, Tell me, what do you want? As soon as the words left his mouth, Sure Wuchen suddenly felt that the tables had turned. Wasn't he here to question him? Why now? How did it turn out like this? If you lose, you'll be my subordinate. If you win, I'll give you whatever you want. Yin Yang said, It's such a simple bet. Don't you understand it? Sure Wuchen grabbed the sword in his hand again and said angrily, Fine, I'll bet. Yin Yang said, Wait, do you think I'll bet just because you said so? Where's your stake? I'm here, my sect is here. Even if I run away, my sect will still be here. But what about you? What if you don't want to admit your loss? There was a swordsman called Liao Yuyan who lied to me like this last time. Swordsmen are unreliable. Sure Wuchen took a deep breath. Bets have always been restricted by heavenly rules. Heaven is the witness of victory and defeat. If you're willing to bet, you have to accept your loss. No one dares to go against it. Are you deliberately making a fool out of me by spouting nonsense and pestering me endlessly? Good. My words are like the wind. It's too late to regret. Yin Yang drew his saber slowly and said, Sure Wuchen, you shall be the first subordinate of the residence of 9 Supremes. Sure Wuchen was so angry that he laughed. I was kind and had no intention of hurting you. But since you've put it that way, I might as well teach you an unforgettable lesson today. There's no such thing as a fluke in the path of cultivation, and it's ridiculous to spout nonsense. At this point, there was no turning back. Both of them held their swords and sabers and stood facing each other from a distance of 50 feet. The battle could break out at any moment. Sure Wuchen circulated the mystical qi in his body, feeling as if his mystical qi was surging like a great river. Although it was not as boundless and endless as when it was at its peak, He was confident that he had the strength to fight. At the very least, his old injuries would not relapse in the battle atmosphere that he had predicted. In this battle, as long as he did not use any power that exceeded that of a 4th-level honor, he would definitely be fine. With this thought in mind, he could not help but feel relieved. With his saint-level deific consciousness, he could quickly determine that Yin Yang's true cultivation base was only 3rd-level honor. Although he was surprised that Yin Yang had such a cultivation base at such a young age, which was very commendable, he would not be able to defeat him in this battle no matter what. In terms of cultivation base, Shi Wuchen's performance was limited, but he was still a 4th-level honor, which was far superior to his opponent. In terms of deific consciousness, he was a saint level 1, which allowed him to know everything about his opponent. In addition to that, there was also his experience and knowledge. How could his opponent be compared to him at such a young age? No matter how one looked at it, the winner of this battle would definitely be him. Shi Wuchen had even thought about it. After he had defeated and subdued Yin Yang, he would definitely teach this young man a good lesson. The condition that he had promised earlier could still be fulfilled. After all, the other party had given him the ethereal amethyst. It would not be nice for Shi Wuchen to finish him off and then take the treasure. After all, a swordsman had his dignity and integrity. However, Shi Wuchen's body suddenly straightened, and the sword in his hand let out a clear clang. In that instant, he seemed to have grown 2 heads taller, showing off his sharpness and gleaming coldly. 2 sharp rays shot out from his eyes, as if they were tangible. The tip of the sword also spat out a sharp sword ray that was at least 3 feet long. At this moment his body, his heart, his spirit, and his sword had all merged into one, without any impurities. I am the sword, and the sword is me. In the face of Shi Wuchen's display of power, Yin Yang's heart trembled violently. A vague thought flashed across his mind, as if something important had flashed by. It was clearly within reach, but he had missed it. Yin Yang wanted to recall it in detail, and seize the opportunity of this flash of inspiration. But unfortunately, he did not have the time to consider it further. This was because the other party's sword had already turned into a ray of light that could split the heavens and the earth, charging towards him. However, in a flash, the sword ray had already reached the center of Yin Yang's brows. Shi Wuchen's attack was so fast that it was the fastest person Yin Yang had ever met in his life. Even Ling Xiaozue, whom Yin Yang had met in the Tianxian continent, might not be as fast as this person's sword at its peak. This sword was so fast that Yin Yang did not even have time to evade it. It seemed like the only way out was to be hit by the sword. Just as the sword seemed to have hit Yin Yang, his entire body turned into a cloud of mist with a poof. The lightning-like sword ray shot through the cloud of mist. It looked like it had hit its target, but in reality, it did not find anything. Shi Wuchen's heart was filled with shock. What was going on? What kind of mystical art was this? How could it be so strange? Before Shi Wuchen could recover from his shock, he had already felt a sharp gust of wind from the saber slashing down from behind him, with an unstoppable momentum. Facing such a vicious attack, Shi Wuchen's shock was dispelled. However, he did not even turn his head. With a casual sway of his body, 3 afterimages shot out at lightning speed. Following that, 3 rays of sword light shot back in the opposite direction to attack Yin Yang. Yin Yang was shocked when he saw Shi Wuchen's counterattack. The triatom sword was impressive. Not only did he abide by his principles, he even looked like an honest man. However, when it came to actual combat, his reactions were swift. Whether it was his reaction, attack, response, or transformation, they were all at his fingertips, and he could do it with ease. This was clearly a combat instinct, one that had been engraved into his bones. This was the result of his countless battles and experience. Yin Yang spun, and turned into a gust of wind. The saber in his hand came down again, mercilessly attacking Shi Wuchen. He did not use saber truth, destiny blade. Shi Wuchen could not help but be shocked when he saw Yin Yang's counterattack, but he did not panic. He turned around and flew away along the ground. Then, with a twist of his body, he returned with his back facing the sky. The sword light formed a curtain of light with a swoosh, raining down like an unbroken waterfall. He now understood that his opponent had cultivated a strange mystical art. A simple slash would not be able to effectively injure his opponent. Therefore, he changed his strategy and switched to a wide-area attack to test the limits of Yun Yang's mystical art. Unexpectedly, just as Yun Yang's form took shape, he turned into a cloud once again under his watchful gaze. Ignoring the attack and damage, Yun Yang swung his saber at his own head once more amidst the gathering of the clouds. Shi Wuchen had predicted his opponent's move wrongly and was almost hit. Fortunately, he was unusually experienced in facing enemies. He quickly turned around and retreated. Although he looked disheveled, he was not injured. He then roared, "What a shameless brat! Using such an unorthodox move against your enemy!" A wave of indignation washed over him. Was this brat a ghost? Chapter 901. Yun Yang's body morphed from a cloud of mist into a solid form. Amidst the gleam of his saber, he slashed down with great force. "Nonsense! You call a mystical art that you don't know a trick? Let me tell you, this is my way of fighting. If I didn't have this skill, how could I have won against a cultivator like you whose cultivation base is far above mine? Do you really think I'm stupid?" Shi Wuchen choked when he heard that, but he was too embarrassed to say anything more. After all, his actual cultivation base was far above Yun Yang's. Just his deific consciousness alone was many times stronger than Yun Yang's. The disparity in strength between the two of them was already too great, and it was unreasonable for him to forbid the other from using his own mystical arts. Moreover, Shi Wuchen was still full of confidence in this battle. Although secret techniques were strange and unpredictable, they still had their limits. Furthermore, they also needed to consume a considerable amount of qi or other spiritual energy to activate them. It was impossible to use them again and again endlessly. With his mystical qi cultivation base and battle experience that far surpassed his opponent's, the final winner of this battle would still be himself. He could even exhaust his opponent to death. What disappointed Shi Wuchen, however, was that it was all in vain even after he switched to 18 sword styles and 7 to 8 combat styles that specifically targeted mystical arts. Although Yun Yang only had one move, he was still able to defeat it. "I'll ignore you. I'll just keep turning into a cloud of mist. After you've attacked, I'll turn back and rise with the wind to counterattack. Even if you have the power to destroy heaven and earth, can you do any harm to a cloud of mist? The most you can do is scatter it. But I can gather it at any time and raise the storm again." The two of them fought like this for almost 4 hours. Shi Wuchen was getting more and more exhausted. It was as if he was fighting a ghost. Every sword strike, no matter how sharp or powerful it was, would always hit the air. It was so uncomfortable that it felt like dying. His opponent, on the other hand, was as lively as he was at the beginning of the battle. He did not even make a move, just simple slash after slash. In other words, his opponent had not even used his true abilities. The more he fought, the more helpless he felt. Suddenly, he leaped out and said with an unbalanced mind, forget it. I'm not fighting anymore. I admit defeat." The great swordsman sure was on the verge of a mental breakdown. He was so aggrieved that he was about to explode. After nearly 4 hours of fierce battle, or rather, a battle of grasping shadows, he came to a conclusion that he had no choice but to accept. Not only was his opponent's secret technique extremely strange, it also consumed very little of his energy. At least up until now, his opponent was still in a state where he could fight for a long time and attack one after another. On the other hand, the constant consumption of his mind during these 4 hours was secondary. What was more important was that the consumption of his mystical qi had reached its limit. If he were to force himself to continue, he would no longer be able to suppress his injuries. Once his injuries broke out, it would be a complete defeat for him. If I wasn't injured, all I need to do is use the world cage. No matter how strange and mysterious your secret technique is, where can you run to? Where are you going? Unfortunately, sigh. He let out a long sigh, and then returned to silence. Yin Yang stopped as well and reassembled himself. With a leisurely smile he asked, "Not fighting anymore?" I'm done. Shi Wuchen shook his head helplessly. There's no way I can fight you in your current state. Yin Yang laughed and fell to the ground. Even if you can't take it anymore, I can't take it any longer either. I'm so tired. He looked so tired that he could not even stand up, and his face was as white as a sheet of paper. To Shi Wuchen, this battle was suffocating. But to Yin Yang, he was exhausted, physically exhausted. His opponent's sword was filled with destruction and killing intent. His cultivation base was a whole level higher than Yin Yang's, and he was enveloped by a deific consciousness that was many levels higher. Facing such an opponent, there was no way he could fight him face to face. Forcing himself to fight him would only lead to his own death. Yin Yang was also unwilling to use his other killing techniques, because once he did, life and death would be decided. Yin Yang did not want to kill this man, nor did he want to put himself in a dead end. Facing a fellow whose true cultivation base had reached the level of a saint, one would know what kind of power he could unleash in a critical moment. Even though Yin Yang had great confidence in himself, he still dared not try it recklessly. As such, using the wind and cloud manifestation art to fight shamelessly became the only choice in this battle. However, the continuous disintegration and reassembly also consumed mystical qi and the energy of wind and cloud. This consumption was also unusually large for Yin Yang, and was definitely not as big of a leeway as Shi Wuchen had predicted. After fighting for so long, even if he was not at his limit, he was almost at his limit. Although he was almost at his limit, it did not mean that he was completely exhausted. The reason why he was in such a weak state could be said to be Yin Yang's last test. If Shi Wuchen seized the opportunity to attack now, Yin Yang would never let him enter the residence of 9 Supremes, no matter how much he liked him. Yin Yang had his own standards when it came to choosing people. He had his own bottom line as well, and this bottom line was not to be broken. Shi Wuchen's eyes brightened, feeling a sense of balance in his heart. He said, "So you can't take it anymore? This mystic art of yours has a limit as well?" Yin Yang nodded. "Of course. Any mystical art has a limit, and I'm not made of steel either. I'll definitely get tired." Shi Wuchen threw his head back and guffawed. "Then I'm relieved. I may not be able to defeat you, but I've still almost exhausted you to death. It's not a huge loss, a complete defeat." Yin Yang was not offended. He said quietly, "So what if it's not a complete defeat? You finally admitted defeat, haven't you? Hurry up and join my sect, Great Swordsman Shi." Shi Wuchen's smile slowly faded, and he began to think seriously. Shi Wuchen's words are like the wind, and they carry enormous weight. "I won't go back on my word. Your sect is being established today. What's its name? How many people are there now? I need to know these things." Yin Yang coughed. "My sect is called the Residence of 9 Supremes. There are 2 people in total now. I'm the sect leader. And there's a major domo. No, there are 3 of us now. The other one is Shi Wuchen, Great Swordsman Shi, an elder of the sect. I'm quite impressed with you. You've become an elder the moment you joined the sect. Your luck is really not bad." Shi Wuchen's mouth slowly widened. "Wait, let's make things clear first. There are only 2 people in the Residence of 9 Supremes? A sect leader and a major domo? There are only 3 of us, including me. With such a small scale, you want to recruit me?" Yin Yang blushed, which was rare for him. He coughed awkwardly. "You said it yourself that our sect is still being established, and it will grow stronger in the future. The future is bright and promising. Becoming an elder of the sect will be the wisest choice in your life." What he said was unreasonably confident, as if it was self-confidence for the sake of self-confidence, a one-sided declaration that it was high-end and classy. It was exactly the same as a certain sale. Shi Wuchen was speechless. He looked up at the sky for a long time, not saying anything for a long time. At this moment, he felt as if he had suffered 10,000 points of damage, and there was not an ounce of falsehood in it. To think that I, Shi Wuchen, am the Triatom Swordsman. Although I dare not say that my name is renowned throughout the world and the bound of universe, I'm still a renowned hero. How many sects have invited me with sincerity, but I've turned them down. Who would have thought that a sect with only 2 people would come to recruit me? It's like riding a tiger." Chapter 902. But he still lost the bet. The words were spoken like the wind. Even if he regretted it, it was too late. The other party's invitation could be considered as a form of courtesy, or it could even be considered as a form of urging. But if the other party were to directly ask you to fulfill the terms of the bet, wouldn't it be shameful if you refused? Sure Wuchen looked resigned to his fate. A gentleman keeps his word. Since I've admitted defeat myself, of course, I won't go back on my word. However, Lord Sect Leader, what kind of position will you give me after I join this sect? Isn't the title of Grand Elder too perfunctory? Yin Yang coughed and said, Our residence of 9 Supremes isn't just for show. As the name suggests, we need 9 superiors. What do you think of one? Sure Wuchen mumbled, That's more like it. What kind of Supreme are you? Yin Yang replied, My surname is Yin. Naturally, I'm Supreme Cloud. Sure Wuchen said excitedly, Great, great, great. Then from today onwards, I'm Supreme Sure? Sure Zun. Yin Yang spat it out, choking. He coughed repeatedly, his face flushed. Sure Wuchen stared blankly for a moment before realization dawned on him. He grimaced and said, That doesn't sound good. It's very inelegant. It's very easy to misunderstand, isn't it? Cough, cough, cough. Yin Yang coughed hard, thinking to himself, You are not just easily misunderstood. You will definitely misunderstand. T Supreme. Big brother, are you trying to discuss me? If one of the 9 Supremes is Supreme shit, I'd rather you don't join us. Aren't you being too generous? You're a famous swordsman. Let's call you Supreme Sword. Yin Yang suggested hurriedly, ignoring the fact that he might have plagiarized the name of Venerable Lord Sword from the Four Seasons Tower. Sure Wuchen said hesitantly, But this doesn't sound good either. Supremacy despicable. He's not much stronger than Supremacy shitty. Yin Yang was speechless. What do you plan to call yourself then? Your surname is Sure. There's nothing I can do about it. You practice swordsmanship. There's nothing I can do about it. What else can you do? They have to live up to their name and have a purpose, right? Sure Wuchen probed, How about, I'll be ranked second under you. You'll be the lead Venerable One, and I'll be the second Venerable One? Yin Yang's eyes narrowed at once. Supreme, 2 Venerables? Do you really think? Second Venerable sounds better than Venerable Sword? Sure Wuchen was at a loss. But, Yin Yang said, Why don't you call yourself Supreme Sword? You used to be called Swordsman, but now you're called Revered Scum. People who hear you will only think that you've leveled up. That's enough. If you insist too much, you'll only become more unruly. What else do you want? Sure Wuchen looked helpless. Forget it, Supreme Sword it is then. Suddenly he sighed deeply and said, This reincarnation is really a technical job. If I had been born into a family with another surname, I wouldn't be in such a dilemma today. Yin Yang snorted. Supreme Sword is still stronger than Supreme Shit, isn't it? However, if you really mind it too much, you can take a knife and cut your own throat. You'll have another chance. And I can keep the position I promised you for another 18 years. Sure Wuchen rolled his eyes. He felt that his new sect master's mouth was really speechless. Sure Wuchen swore to the heavens, pledged his loyalty, and joined the residence of 9 Supremes. The shadow of a white flag circled around his body before returning to Yin Yang. The ceremony was considered complete. It was getting dark. Sect Master, where shall we rest tonight? Over there seems to be a cave. Let's rest there for the time being. Yin Yang looked at Sure Wuchen, who had washed his face and returned to his clean and tidy appearance, and was once again surprised. So your appearance is quite passable. Sure Wuchen was speechless. How was it just passable? Sure Wuchen, the great swordsman Sure, was definitely a handsome man. He was about 27 or 28 years old, with a square face, a high nose bridge, thick lips and single eyelid eyes, which made his gaze seem even colder and sharper. He was tall and straight, only a little shorter than Yin Yang. He was dressed in a fitted green robe, making him look even more valiant and dignified. In terms of bearing and demeanor alone, he was above Yin Xiaoyao and Bai Yixue. His cultivation base was even more so, as he could not compete with the two of them. After all, Sure Wuchen's true cultivation base was enough to make Yin Yang vanquish. In the cave, Sure Wuchen was still sighing and sighing, feeling a little disheartened, as if he had boarded a pirate ship, and his future was bleak. However, all the negative emotions vanished instantly when he witnessed Yun Yang setting up the mountain guarding formation with his own eyes. Under his gaze, Yun Yang sprinkled pieces of purple crystals here and there before planting them into the formation flags. 108 formation flags landed on the ground one after another. The last formation flag, together with the last piece of purple crystal, landed on the centermost square. However, the unique purple crystals disappeared without a trace the moment the formation flags were completed. As the foundation of the formation was completed, the entire mountain began to tremble, as if it was shrinking. The power of countless earth veins began to gather beneath his feet from all directions. The sky was filled with sparkling stars, shining brightly at the same time. The sea of stars shone brilliantly. In an instant, the peak where the residence of 9 Supremes was located was engulfed in an atmosphere of rising white fog. One could not even see their fingers in front of them, and their deific senses could not extend far. Following that, spiritual chi from thousands of miles around swarmed over and gathered at the 9 peaks. The gathering of spiritual chi lasted for the entire night. The next morning, all right, Yin Yang heaved a sigh of relief. The foundation of this formation is complete. It's enough for the initial use. Is this the legendary heavenly stellar formation that has been lost for a long time? Shi Wuchen asked with a face full of respect. Venerable sword, you think too highly of me. This formation gathers energy from the starlight of the sky, but it's still far from the real heavenly stellar formation. Yin Yang smiled. I name it the 5-elemental Yin Yang starlight formation. This formation gathers the power of the 5 elements, transforms Yin and Yang, gathers the power of the stars, gathers the chi of the earth veins from all directions, and guides the spiritual energy from thousands of miles into one place. This formation is the foundation of the residence of 9 Supremes. It must not be destroyed. Yun Yang continued faintly, complemented by the energy provided by 108 crystals. It forms a self-defense mechanism. Although our residence of 9 Supremes mountain guarding formation is not as indestructible as the heavenly stellar formation, it should be able to withstand a Saint Emperor's attack without suffering any damage. Saint Emperor. Shi Wuchen's eyes widened. What did you use to set up the formation? How could it be so powerful? I need proof. Shi Wuchen had seen his fair share of mountain guarding formations, but this was the first time he had heard of one that worked as Yin Yang had described. It's just some of the rarer energy crystals. I brought them all from the place where I ascended. Yin Yang said lightly. He thought to himself, if I were to tell the truth and say that I had used 108 ethereal amethysts to set up the formation, would this fellow faint? I won't ask if you don't want to go into detail, but the spiritual chi density in this mountain gate, isn't it a little too thick? Shi Wuchen sniffled. Even a sect with a lower-class celestial luck banner might not be able to compare to us. This is just a newly established formation. After the formation runs for a long time, I'm afraid the spiritual energy will increase to another level. This is the effect of the formation I've set up. This is far from the limit, Yin Yang said perfunctorily. I'm just letting you experience it first. I'll stop the spiritual chi gathering function later, and wait for Fatty to bring the others back. After all, we still have to build the sect's Grand Hall. When the Grand Hall is completed, we'll set up the formation to seal the mountain gate. Today, the residence of 9 Supremes has finally officially settled down in the bound of universe. Yin Yang was filled with emotions. He would not know how difficult it was to survive in the bound of universe until he arrived. Now, however, he had finally taken the first step. What are we going to do next? Shi Wuchen asked. Rob. Shi Wuchen's tone changed instantly. You heard me right. Rob. Yin Yang said faintly. In the bound of universe, robbing is a legal occupation. How can we not make use of it? As long as it passes through here, we rob it. If there's a condition, we rob it. If there's no condition here, we'll rob somewhere else. If there's no condition anywhere, we'll create the condition and still rob. Shi Wuchen was speechless. Now he finally knew for sure that he had really boarded a pirate ship. Robbery. Although it was legal, all the consequences had to be borne by the person himself. How many people would he offend in the future once he started robbing? Sher Wuchen's legs trembled at the thought of the overwhelming number of enemies coming to the residence of 9 Supremes. Is it too late for me to back out now? Sher Wuchen asked weakly. What do you think? Yun Yang gave him a sidelong glance. If you're not afraid of heaven's wrath, just back out. You can come and go freely here. Sher Wuchen lowered his head and inhaled deeply with endless remorse. His voice even sounded like he was about to cry. It's a pity that I haven't had my revenge yet. Yin Yang rolled his eyes and left on his own. In the next 3 days, I'll do my best to help you recover from your injuries. After that, we'll begin our operation. You're a saint-level cultivator, the top expert of our sect. Naturally, you'll be the leader of our sect's first operation. This time, Sher Wuchen really wanted to cry but had no tears to shed. I'm actually the first scapegoat. Chapter 903. However, what surprised him the most was Yin Yang's next sentence. You'll help me heal? 3 days. Sher Wuchen's eyes widened. Sher Wuchen was not surprised that Yin Yang had made him the #1 fighter. His cultivation base was there for all to see. Since he had joined the sect, it was only right for him to contribute. At the same time, he could not be surprised that Yin Yang had offered to help him heal. Only when his injuries were healed would he be able to unleash more of his combat power. This was only natural and reasonable. What really shocked Sher Wuchen was Yin Yang's claim of healing in 3 days. I've only recovered by 30% after 3 years of recuperation, with the help of the Earth's energy. Do you think I'll believe you if you say I'll recover in 3 days? I'll be damned if I believe you. However, as a stream of life essence entered his body, Sher Wuchen shut his mouth obediently, his face filled with excitement. The truth was right before his eyes. No matter how bizarre it was, he had to believe it. His actual cultivation base had long reached the level of a saint. Naturally, he knew what was good and what was bad. He asked subconsciously, is this an chi of essence? With this extremely pure life force, it was enough to suppress all the adverse reactions caused by the pain. He no longer had to worry about anything. All he needed to do was focus on cultivating and healing his wounds. Recovering 70% of his strength in a day was expected. In that case, not only was there no problem in saying that he would fully recover the day after tomorrow, it was even a very conservative way of putting it. If he could keep some of this mystical chi of essence for himself, so that he could use this life force to strengthen his cultivation base, perhaps it would be of great help to a breakthrough in his cultivation base in the future. This was clearly a fortuitous opportunity bestowed by the heavens. A super wonderful thing like a meat pie falling from the sky. Sher Wuchen suddenly felt that joining the residence of 9 Supremes did not seem to be a bad thing. Instead, it was an opportunity for his future cultivation path. In fact, he had long thought of joining a sect. Even if he was not recruited by Yin Yang today, and was recruited by someone else, as long as the other party was passable, he would most likely go with the flow. Over the years, he had experienced the annihilation of his family and had been wandering around the world. After all, it was inevitable to make enemies if one wanted to survive in Jianghu. The numerous enemies had forced him to the point where he had nowhere to go. Without any help, he had long felt alone and powerless. Yin Yang's invitation was exactly what he wanted. Otherwise, even if it was difficult to break Yin Yang's cloud manifestation, as long as he spared no expense and aggravated his injuries, to cast the heaven and earth cage forcefully, Yin Yang might not necessarily perish here, judging by the difference in their abilities. As long as he could obtain the ethereal amethyst, with Sher Wuchen's cultivation base, he would be able to suppress his injuries and heal himself. Therefore, rather than saying that he was completely at Yin Yang's mercy, Sher Wuchen was also willing to cooperate. It was like Shimen Qing seducing Pan Jinlian. The latter was actually willing to go along with it despite her reluctance. Of course, in the end, the two of them were lovey-dovey and hooked up to each other. It was just that Sher Wuchen's thought during the battle between him and Yin Yang when he compromised and admitted defeat, was that he was now a member of an organization. Although this organization might not be reliable, if someone were to pick a fight with him at any time, he would do his best to handle it if he could. However, if he really could not handle it, he would not sacrifice his life for nothing. His own life was his number one priority, and he would act according to the circumstances, without putting up a strong front. Supreme Cloud was not a simple fellow. His strange ability of not dying no matter how hard he tried was enough to prove that he had some skill. Then, after watching Yun Yang set up the formation, Shi Wuchen had a new understanding in his heart. Not only was this fellow's cultivation method unique, but he was also well-versed in formations. He was truly a rare talent. If he followed such a person, he might be able to make a name for himself. When Yun Yang healed the injuries that he had not recovered from for 3 years and 3 days, Shi Wuchen let out a long, heartfelt sigh of relief. They had not even done anything, and he had already received such a huge benefit. It would not be right for him to hold back any longer. In that case, he would stay here wholeheartedly. If he were to encounter any danger, he would just risk his life. With such sincerity, if he still harbored the thought of leaving at any time, at least in his heart, he would not be able to hold back. The moment this thought appeared in his mind, he suddenly felt his thoughts become clear, as if his entire body had relaxed. Only then did Shi Wuchen feel his thoughts clear, and his body and mind refreshed. At the same time, he felt that the spiritual qi around him had increased again. He calmed his mind and examined it carefully. He realized that the originally dense spiritual qi seemed to have increased tremendously. He could not help but ask, "Boss, what exactly did you use to enhance the formation base? How did it become so effective?" Shi Wuchen did not believe Yin Yang's words about rare energy crystals at all. "It's something that seems ordinary to me, and I have a lot of it in my hands." Yin Yang still did not tell the truth. "I'll tell you when I have the time and see its effects. It's not that I don't want to tell you, it's actually very ordinary. I have a lot of it." Although this was not a lie or a boast to Yin Yang, the truth was extremely ridiculous. King said that the ethereal amethyst is ordinary, and that you have a lot of it in your hands. Even if it's true, you wouldn't dare to say that. Aren't you afraid of being ganged up on and beaten to death? Shi Wuchen nodded as expected. Since it's an ordinary item, I won't probe further. He was an understanding man, and a transparent person. They had just met for the first time, and it was indeed a taboo to talk too much. There was still plenty of time in the future, so there was no need to be calculative. At this moment, little fatty Qian Duo was in the persona of a wealthy young master, participating in the bidding in the auction house. His legs were crossed, and he had the demeanor of a young master. His aura was extraordinary. If it weren't for the fact that my family's business has declined, why would I bring out such a priceless treasure? Little Fatty lamented. My eldest uncle, second uncle, and the rest of them indulge in debauchery, whoring and gambling. Sigh. They've even gotten themselves sexually transmitted. Now, the livelihood of the entire family rests on my head alone. Life is tough. A family like ours with 5,000 years of history is slowly declining. It's really shameful to talk about it. However, no matter how difficult it is, we'll never sell this ancestral treasure at such a cheap price. If the price you offer isn't suitable, we won't make a move no matter what. No matter how down and out we are, our family with 5,000 years of history can still withstand some hardships." The people from the auction house, on the other hand, looked speechless, helpless, and indifferent. "If it's auctioned off, how about we sell it at the auction price?" That's not impossible. However, with such a good item being auctioned off, other than the shocking price it'll fetch, there'll also be room for you to raise your reputation. In that case, won't you benefit even more? The commission, however, can't be calculated according to the norm. Normally, an auction house takes 10% of the commission. Apart from waiving the commission, you'll have to pay me an additional 100 pieces of superior grade spiritual jade. I won't insist on anything else. We have to lower our heads when we're under someone else's roof. To think that we, a 5,000-year hidden family, have seen all kinds of trials and tribulations, have to sell off our ancestral treasure to maintain our livelihood, just because our descendants are unfilial. The people from the auction house almost frowned in unison. What the F***ck? Not only are we working for free, but we're also making a loss to earn money. And you're making it look like you're making a loss while we're taking advantage of you. Chapter 904. No, that's impossible. The manager's head was like a rattle drum. Rich young master, your suggestion is too harsh. We have a big family to feed as well. If what you've said is true, not only will we not get any scraps, we'll have to pay for firewood as well. How can there be such a logic in this world? Then what do you say? The ethereal amethysts you've offered are indeed exceptional items. But we'll make an exception, and take 5% is already our limit. As for the additional compensation of 100 upper-tier spiritual jade pieces, the manager was implying something between the lines. No, I'll be losing too much if we make a deal like that. This is the ethereal amethysts we're talking about. A dream item that's rarely seen in this world. How many years has it been since it's appeared in our area? Don't you know how big of a commotion it'll cause once this thing appears? The ethereal amethysts that idiot took out a few days ago caused the loss of countless lives. Our piece, on the other hand, has no karmic ties and no repercussions at all. You really don't understand the pros and cons of this. Rich young master, you said yourself that you're a 5,000-year-old aristocratic family. How can you lose the bearing of an aristocratic family? Shouldn't you at least leave us some leeway? The saying that an auction house is asking for money instead of earning is unheard of in history. This is against the rules. Forget it. Who asked me to be born in a 5,000-year-old aristocratic family? I'll take a step back. As for the specifics, you guys can discuss it among yourselves. I've already taken a step back, and I can't afford to lose out again. All right. We'll settle on 1 point. This is really the limit we can accept. If it's any lower, I'll have to ask you to look elsewhere, young master. 1 point it is. Wouldn't it have been over if you'd said that earlier? Deal. 1 point. That was 10% of 10%. 1%. This could be said to be extremely meager. The auctioneer immediately realized that he had been tricked. This fellow had put on an attitude that said he would not budge no matter what. He was basically lying in wait to scam him. However, a word was spoken, especially when he was the one who set the price first. There was no way to retract it. May I ask how many ethereal amethysts you have, young master? Give me an actual number, so that I can decide accordingly. The manager of the auction house was growing more and more indignant. If the other party only had 1 piece of ethereal amethyst after paying such a hefty price, then it would be a huge loss. The ethereal amethyst is a divine item. How would I dare to bring more of it with me? I only have 3 pieces with me now. Chien Duo sighed. Of course it's not just 3. There are more at home, but it's not convenient to take them out now. Oh. Immediately, the few of them began to rack their brains. Even if there were only 3 pieces, it was still quite a lot. Moreover, it wasn't just 3. There were even more at home. What kind of great family would have such a heritage? To what extent had it declined? Was he forced to trade the ethereal amethysts for survival resources? However, no matter how one put it, a family that possessed more than 1 piece of ethereal amethyst, no matter how much they had declined, was still not something that ordinary people could touch. There was no doubt about that. Moreover, from the information that had been revealed so far, it was true that this family had squandered almost all of their wealth. But how many top-notch experts were there in the family? This was not easy to assess. How long do you plan to start the auction? I need an accurate time. Of course, but we're preparing to prepare for the auction, release the news, and then confirm the time. No matter what, this process will take about a month to attract those who are truly capable. A month's preparation is too long. I don't have that much time to linger here idle. Forget it. Give me 50 million inferior grade spiritual jade pieces first. When the auction is over, just deduct the 50 million spiritual jade pieces. The little fatty spoke in a matter-of-fact tone. What are you looking at? I'm here to trade the ethereal amethysts. Of course I have to bring the money back as soon as possible. Only then will I have a reason to tell the family to bring out a few more pieces for you to auction. Otherwise, it'll take up a lot more time and delay. The people from the auction house initially disagreed, but their eyes lit up when they heard the latter part of the sentence. The market price of 3 pieces of ethereal amethysts would at least exceed 100 million inferior-grade spiritual jade pieces. For him to leave with 50 million first, that would make sense. All right. After receiving the money, the little fatty took the contract established by the heavenly axiom and said faintly, "Have you arranged a backdoor for me to escape? You're not planning to expose the contents of this transaction in advance, are you?" That did seem to be the case. It was such a big deal anyway. Having an extra bodyguard would be an investment for the subsequent transaction. The little fatty left leisurely, not taking a single cloud with him. All he took was a huge amount of inferior-grade territory, leaving 3 pieces of ethereal amethysts behind. As the transaction came to an end, the people from the auction house looked at each other. Looking at the 3 pieces of ethereal amethysts on the table, everyone in the meeting felt as if they were in a dream. These were ethereal amethysts that had not appeared in this realm for thousands of years, and now there were 3 of them right in front of them. Send them to the secret chamber at once. Watch them closely. Spread the news immediately. Pay close attention to this rich young master's every move. Don't act rashly, and wait for the follow-up. Spread the news everywhere for 15 days. Then, on the 20th day, we'll begin the first round of the auction with the ethereal amethysts as the finale item. Understood. More than 2 hours later, the person who sent Qian Duoduo out returned with a face full of fear. "Boss, we didn't follow him." After the kid went out, he went straight into a brothel and found 3 girls to drink with him. And then he started messing around, even more of a popinjay than the most popinjays. We waited outside for something like this. In the end, when the door opened, only 3 girls came out. We tried our best to go in and take a look, but the rich young master was nowhere to be found. This subordinate deserves to die. The stewards of the auction house looked at each other for a long time. After a while, the leader sighed and said, "You can't be blamed for this. How could the descendants of a great clan with thousands of years of inheritance not have the ability to protect themselves? Forget it. We've already gotten a great deal in this transaction. There's no need to complicate matters further." Understood. Boss, do you think this kid is one of the 2 people that day? Hehe, you're thinking too much. To us, even if it's those 2, they're still customers. Understood. Now the ethereal amethysts of those 2 have nothing to do with us, understand? That's what a ruined family should be, understand? Understood. Today is Teacher's Day. Happy Teacher's Day to all the teachers in the world. In the morning, Auntie Fong drove to pay a visit to the teacher's house and delivered a few boxes of mooncakes. The teachers were very excited and gratified. We were happy too, but I was the only one who felt a little gloomy, especially when a few teachers held my hand and said, "What a surprise! You failed so many subjects back then, and were bullied by little girls every day. Who would have thought that you could write a novel today?" I was stunned on the spot. When did I get bullied by little girls? Why don't I remember? The worst thing was that the old homeroom teacher, who was 75 today, patted my head and said, "This kid used to be stupid. Back then, I hit his head with my pointer, and he must have been enlightened since then." Teacher, you read web novels often, don't you? According to this, I should be reborn. However, looking at the neatly arranged set of world-defying 9 heavens in the old man's study, as well as the evil lord and Ling Tian Heavenly Domain's traditional Chinese books, he said to me proudly, "I'll tell whoever comes, this was written by my student." The old man looked proud. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.